Hi guys, let me know if the audio is coming fine. So today we are going to discuss this research paper by Yusuf Unjhawala. Let me just check if the audio is coming fine, etc. from my phone. अच्छा, मेरे खुद के चैनल पे खुद को ऐड देखना होगा. So this guy obviously appeared on Kushal Mehra's podcast a while back, just 1 or 2 hours back, and that's where I learnt of this paper. And then I skimmed through it a bit. Okay, audio is fine it seems. Research paper. Okay, thanks. So you all, if whoever saw that podcast today will know that what a phenomenal job Kushal Mehra did today, countering this person. Now I had no idea who he was. Then later I realized that he has been on Jaipur Dialogues, etc. In 2020 I saw that I was checking up a little bit on him, whether he's a right winger, left winger, or balanced. What is he? So he seems more or less balanced. In 2020 he wrote an article in the print saying that Narendra Modi is making a mistake by snubbing opponents of him even in foreign countries. So first of all, snubbing is not a technical term. Snubbing means that I just don't give a shit about you. I don't want to talk to you. And as an example of that, he gave the example that when Modi went for the Howdy Modi thing in USA, Pramila Jayapal and those Democrats who are vehement opposers of Modi and vehement supporters of Azad Kashmir, etc., and that the claim that India should get out of Kashmir, all those crap. S. Jaishankar said that I don't want to talk to you. Who the fuck are you? So, and these were used by Yusuf Unjhawala as an example of Modi snubbing opponents in other countries as well. And I don't really see why that should be a problem, because his argument in that particular article was that why alienate these people? Why antagonize these people? Because basically you might need them when they come to power, right? But you can alienate them specifically because they are not in power, because when they are in power, we will look at their foreign policy. We don't need to look what is in their hearts. When they are not in power, when they are just the Democratic Party in USA, we can look at their hearts and say that I don't want to talk to you, because the Democratic Party is vehemently anti-Hindu and pro-Kashmir, pro-Azad Kashmir, etc. So I don't see what the fault of Jaishankar was in that case. And if they do come to power and hold these exact same views, then fair enough. Then we will have to seek an antagonistic path forward, like we are doing with Canada. But so anyway, during the Kushal Mehra podcast, I saw that Kushal Mehra did a great job explaining that he is in favor of learning whatever there is to learn from the West, etc. Even I do listen to Jordan Peterson. I follow American politics extensively, so I have no anything American is bad, etc. those kind of views. But and I do think there in the future people will realize that you may have differences with Abrahamic faiths, and or maybe you think you are allied with Abrahamic faiths, you are allied with indigenous faiths, whatever. Sooner or later, everyone will realize that the real enemy is the Pattharbaz. Now, and everyone is facing problems about that. Non-left of every country today is facing problems with the Pattharbazes. तो वो sooner or later होगा ही. जितना वो अमेरिकन फार राइट कंजर्वेटिव कन्वर्जन का ड्रीम देखता रहे इंडिया में, एक दिन पूरा इंडिया क्रिश्चियन होगा, वो उसका ड्रीम रहने दो अलाबामा के किसी गांव में. बट सूनर और लेटर दे विल रियलाइज दैट वी आर देयर बिगेस्ट एलाई इन द पत्थरबाज क्वेश्चन. बट in case of India-US ties, obviously we have to tread very, very carefully, and S. Jaishankar, people like them don't need to be told, but there needs to be a general mass discourse about these things as well, that how much are the Indian crowds, the masses, in favor of it or against it. So in that case, I thought, let's check out the paper. And at first I thought he is going to criticize the idea of furthering India-US ties. Then I realized that he's criticizing the criticisms of India-US ties. And that, first of all, made my spidey senses tingle a little bit, because as anyone who has been who holds any views in any sector which is contrary to the mainstream consensus, they will know that you are always up against studies Studies have shown studies have shown dogs can fly, etc. Any studies can be funded by anyone to show any random thing. And economists will tell you that you can create a model to justify anything. So, since I've been vegan since 2015, I know that what studies what all sorts of crap they can show you. I do intermittent fasting, and then again I can show you studies on both sides who vehemently claim that yeah, they are right. So you always need to check out what a think tank, who a think tank is funded by, or who these people are who are coming up with these studies or these papers. So even though I on the face of it, I don't have a problem with US-India friendship, but since I do want to be very careful about it, I did try to look up a little bit about these people called the Takshashila organization or institution, of which Yusuf Unjhawala is a part of. And there I found some phenomenal people and some people who you might be cautious of if you want to. So we'll get into all that. We'll get into the website. We'll get into who are the people who run these things, because anyone who see, USA has faced these problems for a long time. All the people who were vociferously in favor of US-China business were being funded by China. Because of that, I think we should always be careful about who is being vociferous about doing business with someone. Are they in some way in a position to gain something out of that relationship? So for that, I needed to look into the website as well. Okay, a lot of comments are coming. Let me check out some comments. Gagan Arora is saying US want to protect its primary interest, that is not economic hegemony, rather cultural hegemony. Bharat joining them for economics interest will kill hope for non-Abrahamic beliefs. More or less. Rutvik, here is an alternative history that scares me. Europe absorbs the peaceful demographic challenge. They are not H or B. They have a 200-year intellectual tradition to rely on. Legend Movies is saying, Niranjanda, please uttar dao of what? Why is there a discrimination of Biharis in Bengal, Nirajanda? Oh, yeah, I have discussed about this many times. Because see, anytime your economy first and foremost is in the kachra, you will have to blame someone. Now, the people who have led Bengal's economy to go to kachra are the same people who are facing the brunt of that bad economy now. See, who is a Trinamool supporter? Someone who is a leftist. They don't know they are leftists because they don't know the differences between Marxism and capitalism, etc. They will even the people who know they are Marxists, they will say that yes, but most people haven't read Marx. I have read Marx. I have read Gorky, but they don't know that they have not read the opposing views of Marx. They don't know any criticism of Marx. They don't know any criticism of Gorky or any leftist for that matter. They think that they have read a lot of Marxist literature, therefore they are the king of the world. So the leftists are destroying Bengal. And they are facing the brunt of that destruction because now they have to go work outside, or their kids have to go work outside, or their grandchildren have to go work outside. So blame करने को कौन बचा? पत्थरबाज को blame कर नहीं सकते क्योंकि they are the minority, they are a cute little puppy who needs to be petted, they are nice people. तो बाकी कौन रह गया? हिंदू बिहारी, हिंदू मारवाड़ी. Therefore, there's no one else to blame. Biggest thing, if the only way they could get it right is if they blame themselves. That's even more impossible because they are Marxists at their heart, and Marxists are going to start out with arrogance and they will always lack humility, so they can't blame themselves at all. Prakash Pal, thank you for that monetary support. Abhay Agarwal is saying, did you see many cases one after the other filed against Bageshwar Dham? Yes. Maximus Prime is saying Google Meter code দেখা যাচ্ছে full screen করো please. ও কোড দেখা গেলে এই বা কি হবে, কেউ কি হ্যাক ফ্যাক করতে পারবে? Who are responsible for separation of economics? They are real culprits. Yes. Okay. Now let's get into the website called Takshashila Institution. So let's see who are the people who work for them, okay? And I don't want to insinuate anything, but remember they were founded in 2009, okay? Let's see who are their people who are so vociferously in favor of an India-US tie. About us, our team. So this person is Nitin Pai. He writes some pretty fascinating articles on Mint. I don't know any of these people. This person seems pretty big. Dr. Prakash Menon, Lieutenant General. You can see their bios. All at least on the face of it, all phenomenal bios. M. Govindrao has served as the director of National Institute of Public Finance and Policy and as the director of Institute for Social and Economic Change during the Congress government, 2013. Okay, these are some fellows and adjunct fellows, and this is where Unjhawala comes in. Where did Yusuf go? Okay, I can't find him. So anyway, this is one phenomenal woman I found, and I'm going to discuss her book as well in my membership live streams. She is doing some incredible work. She is a PhD in political science from University of Hyderabad. Her dissertation assesses the salience of Kautilyan ideas to better understand the drivers of India's foreign policy. She teaches a course on the relevance of Arthashastra in India's strategic discourse in Takshashila's that whatever course that is, defense analyst or something. There is Yusuf Unjhawala. And we are going to basically take a neutral position here and see if there are good arguments to notice or not. These are the program managers. Okay. Now let's get into. Let me show you the book once about Arthashastra's relevance in today's geopolitics. That's a phenomenal book. Check this out. This is the book. Kautilya's Arthashastra, Strategic Cultural Roots of India's Contemporary Statecraft. It came out just this year. Pretty fascinating book. Right. Okay. Now let's get into the paper. Lots of comments coming in. I can't get into all of them if I want to discuss the paper. Okay. Now let me cast the paper here. Okay, Maximus is saying, interesting. I have seen a bit of Kautilya's disciples information coming through in the Hyderabad's intel circles. I see. There has been a history of targeted Hindu gurus. For example, Swami Lakshmananand, Odisha. Kachi Shankaracharya, Asaram Bapu. Yes, these are the people who are still holding the line now. Rohan Shatra is saying, I don't know the case of Bageshwar Dham, but in one video's comment section I have seen South Indian Christians mocking Bageshwar Dham. Yes, and all the Ambedkarites tried to stop his event from happening, I think in Madhya Pradesh, and the judge laughed it out. Okay. So, assessing arguments against closer India-US ties. So he is going to judge whether those arguments are correct or wrong. So we are not going to look into the abstract or executive summary, etc., because we are going to get into the meat of the matter anyway. It's a 38-page paper and we'll finish it in, I think, 2 or 2.5 hours. So buckle up. Let me know if you can read it from here, okay? So let's see what are his arguments. India-US relations have grown rapidly in the last 20 years. The partnership is described as comprehensive global strategic partnership. Many adjectives have been used to describe the ties. Quote, the most consequential or indispensable or natural allies. The defining partnership of 21st century, a force for good, for global peace and stability, and more. Now, among these, check out these two terms. Natural allies, force for good, for global peace and stability. These two terms are where your alliance with US comes in terms of being against the Patharwaz community. The two countries share very close defense ties, and the US is India's largest trading partner and foreign direct investor. Shared democratic values, the convergence of interests on various issues, and vibrant people-to-people contacts drive the relationship. The Cold War era suspicions and divergences between the US and India, which lasted till the end of the last century, have been overcome. This is a debatable statement according to me. Have they been overcome really? Have the Cold War era suspicions been overcome? Or is there enough reasons to forget them simply? That is what we will judge when he argues against these things. Back then, India was the target of US sanctions over its nuclear program. In addition, US support for India's western neighbor and adversary, Pakistan, and a lack of sensitivity to India's concerns about terrorism emanating from there hindered bilateral ties. And how much are they really avoiding doing that now? They sold those fighter jets to Pakistan even last year, to which S. Jaishankar had to say that you are not fooling anyone. They are saying that we are going to we are selling those to Pakistan so that they can fight terrorism harder. Terrorism fight करेगा कहाँ पे? मुंबई में? खुद के देश में फाइटर जेट से बम से उड़ा देगा? किसको मारेगा वो प्लेन से? इंडिया को मारने के लिए ही यूएसए ने पाकिस्तान को प्लेन बेचा है 2022 में. ठीक है, तो लेट्स नॉट बी ऑल दैट इन लव विथ यूएसए एट द मोमेंट. Hindered bilateral ties. Okay. On the other hand, India pursued a non-aligned policy but leaned toward the Soviet Union, which became its primary source of military equipment. This dependency, with Russia being the USSR's successor state, continues to persist. The end of the Cold War and the disintegration of the Soviet Union forced India to reconsider its policy towards the United States. Despite tensions in the 1990s, both countries recognized the importance and potential of good relations. The seeds were sown during Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's administration, which reached out to the US, leading to the historic Jaswant Talbot talks. In 2004, India-US announced next steps in strategic partnership to expand cooperation in civil nuclear activities, civilian space programs, and high technology trade. This was followed by the 10-year new framework for the US-India defense relations in 2005, which was renewed in 2015. The two countries agreed to strengthen defense relations and sign defense deals to increase security, strengthen strategic ties, and build interoperability. The proclamation of an Indo-US global partnership, leading to the acceptance of India as a quote-unquote responsible state with advanced nuclear technology, alluding to India's nuclear weapons, despite it not being a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. That was a game changer in the ties. Or as Prime Minister Modi said in his address to the US Congress, that changed the very colors of leaves of our relationship. This period was also marked by the US's relationship with China and Pakistan deteriorating. This in turn strengthened India-US ties. The growing strategic competition between the United States and China, particularly since the 2008 global financial crisis, as well as between the United States and Pakistan on the issue of terrorism and the Afghan war, resulted in greater understanding and cooperation in the United States on countering Pakistan's terrorism affecting India. Okay, cooperation कहाँ हुआ? जहाँ के पाकिस्तान को last year भी plane बेचा गया. Okay, now one might argue that maybe Unjhawala would argue that that's not the end all be all of the entire partnership. Just because they gave sold those planes to Pakistan, that doesn't mean that now they are completely pro-Pakistan. They obviously want to have some check and balance with India, so that India doesn't completely immediately become a superpower. तो थोड़ा बहुत balance तो USA को करना है. तो but let's not just forget that USA is still at least somewhat friends with Pakistan. They have not completely forgotten Pakistan, who is our sworn enemy. Unless they completely turn their backs on Pakistan, we have reasons to be suspicious of US foreign policy. That's all I'm saying. As India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar articulated, if you were to ask me in these years what has been the really remarkable change in how India views the world in terms of relationships, I think there's no questions, it's our relationship with the United States. India's primary foreign policy objective is to leverage its foreign relations for economic development and develop strategic partnerships with countries that can help achieve that. The US and Europe are the most important sources of technology, direct investments, capital, and export markets. India pursues these relations as a rising economic and military power that defends its vital interests and aspires to play a significant role on the international stage. Although India's relations with the US have grown substantially, suspicions remain within certain quarters of the Indian public and intelligentsia. They tend to argue that the US is fundamentally an unreliable partner. To make this case, they point to the history of India-US relations, ideological divergences, and the power the US wields. Often quoted is former US National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger that to be an enemy of America can be dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. At the extreme end of these apprehensions are conspiracy theories and unfounded fears, which, if allowed to influence policies, will have a negative impact on critical ties for India's security and economic development. This paper investigates various arguments against closer ties with the US that are frequently seen in Indian commentaries in the media, social media, and offline and online discourse. The arguments or fears are understandable in some cases, yet not insurmountable, which the two countries can't address for mutual benefit. It can be done. Some are unfounded, while others fail to give due weightage to India's stature in the world, its growing strength, and its agency in doing what is in its best interests, even if it's against US foreign policy objectives. So, what they're saying here, what he's saying here is that let's not be that suspicious of these ties, because India is much stronger now. So maybe they won't be able to wield that much power against India as they could have done 20 or 30 years back. The paper has 3 sections. The first section discusses common arguments against closer military ties with the United States. The second section discusses common political arguments about the burdens of increased proximity to the US. The third section makes the economic case for closer India-US ties. The paper concludes by arguing that one must evaluate India's foreign policy decisions and partnerships free from ideology and emotions in the pursuit of its strategic and economic goals, giving due weight to its current and growing stature, not with a sense of inferiority complex or as a country that lacked heft in the previous century. Now it's time to remember that you are a big country and prosperous country. While there are several arguments for closer ties with the US and India, there are also several arguments against closer ties with India and the US. These, however, are not within the scope of this paper. So he's saying that he does have actually some arguments against India-US ties, but he's not going to discuss them in this paper. Okay. Now we are starting with the military arguments. Now let me check some comments for a bit. Abhay Agarwal is saying, big problem with India-US is this woke democratic government. Yes, absolutely. Republicans were relatively better for India, especially Trump. No, you are a little, Abhay, you are 90% correct. Republicans have never been great for India. It's specifically Trump who has been better for India. Okay. And as you can see that Trump is hated by the Republican establishment. All those people all those pro-war Democrats, pro-war Republicans, pro-war Fox News, pro-war liberal news channels, all of them have hated Trump. All those old establishment pro-war Republicans have gone on Democrat channels, liberal channels and said that, yes, even I'm a conservative, yes, even I'm a Republican, but Trump is too much. So those people remain. So you see, you can't really equate Republicans with Trump. Not today, not anymore. And even today, all the people who are opposing Trump, all like people like Ted Cruz, or everyone else except Trump and to some extent Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, except these two people, everyone in the top leadership brasses of Republican Party are against India. Okay. Only Trump has some forward thinking and some fresh set of eyes that he brings into the game. That's why he realizes that no, we need to have great relationships with India. Okay, Maximus is saying, where is Shravya, Harsh? Haven't seen them in live stream. Okay. Where is Pakistani military getting the fuel for the planes? From US only, or China? Is it really the case that US cannot subvert us? I'm not so sure. He seems to think so, that क्योंकि आज 5th largest GDP बन गए हैं, therefore we can't be subverted. But if you see many countries, people who don't get into a lot of economics, etc., they get pissed off with Modi if one day our economic growth rate shows 7.2% instead of 8%. Okay, but almost every major country, you will see that they have long left behind their peak GDP. Okay, most countries today, even most big countries, most leading prosperous countries, are way below their whatever highest prosperity or GDP they had hit. Okay, so let's not take these things for granted. Or growth rate also. Most countries don't have a 8%, 7% growth rate. So what I'm saying is that just because you are a 5th largest GDP with 8% growth rate does not mean that you will keep being that. It's very easy to disrupt a 5th largest GDP with 8% growth rate as well. 15 years later, we might look at these years and think that, wow, that was such a great time and now we are again screwed up. It's very possible. You absolutely have to be on your toes in that case. Okay. Now, arguments Literary arguments. Argument M.1. The US is an unreliable supplier. Okay. इस बीच में यूसुफ उंझावाला का क्या डिफेंस है, क्या काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट है, देखते हैं. As India continues to increase its defense purchases from the US, doubts persist among security pundits about American reliability, given Washington's penchant for using sanctions to shape desired foreign policy outcomes. And because we are buying so much from US, that is why they are letting Modi get away with a lot of things. नहीं तो कुछ भी excuse में वो sanction कर सकता है. Their fears are not unfounded. So even if in this case, Make in India is actually going to be a problem if we just try to do everything Make in India, because just to keep some countries happy, we have to keep buying some crap or the other from them. Okay. For example, Bangladesh. Today in the Kushal Mehra podcast only, Kushal Mehra or Yusuf himself gave the example that, Yusuf Unjhawala only gave the example that we started buying so much shirts from Bangladesh, made in Bangladesh shirts, that because of that reason apparently, illegal immigration has dropped. Okay, that's according to Yusuf Unjhawala. I don't exactly know the statistics, but that has made so many people in our southern India go out of job. Okay, now that is a balance we'll have to make. The best option would be to, okay, let whoever comes in, we'll send them back. वो नहीं करेगा. Or come in, stay, but stay as a decent man, not as a पत्थरबाज. वो भी नहीं होगा. So instead we are making our own people go jobless so that we can buy shirts from Bangladesh so that their GDP grows higher, so that they don't come to India. वो हमारे यहाँ ना आए, इसलिए हम उनको अमीर बना रहे हैं while making our people go jobless. That is our policy with Bangladesh for now. Okay. Liberandus के चिविया. Okay. Okay. Now sanctions. Okay. So Yusuf is saying that their fears are not unfounded. There are historical precedents from around the world that attest to this, that anytime US doesn't like you, they will sanction you. Proponents of such arguments receive a shot in the arm following comments by American Deputy National Security Advisor for International Economics Dalip Singh during his visit to India in March 2022. Singh had then threatened India with consequences if it undermined US sanctions imposed on Russia following its invasion of Ukraine. Okay, just to digress a little, do you all know this fact right now that Europe today buys oil from India which we have bought from Russia, because they get to tell their people that, see, we are so nice people that we don't buy oil from Russia. You know that case, right? And their people are that stupid. They don't know much about India. They don't even know if India produces oil or not. They think, okay, they are not buying from Russia. They are buying from randomly they are buying from India. They are buying from us what we bought from Russia only. Following the US arms embargo on India during the 1965 war with Pakistan, India became heavily dependent on Russia for weapons. It did not buy any weapons from the US until the relationship changed at the turn of the century. In fact, the first significant purchase was made in 2008 for the C-130 transport aircraft. The current reality of the ties is described as a partnership of trust by Modi. And the geopolitical situation is very different from the Cold War era. As India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar noted, India shouldn't limit its possibilities in the fast-changing field of emerging technology solely because of the country's difficult experiences of the past due to sanctions imposed by the US. The US is now the most forceful advocate for India. This is a little bit of an overstatement because of the press. Obviously, he needs to give out good lines so that the friendship is strengthened in the US media. The US on its part is actively wooing India and wants to be seen as a reliable partner. And the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said, while acknowledging that Washington had not partnered with India over several decades when the Russians did, times have changed. Today we are able and willing to be a partner of choice with India across virtually every realm: commerce, technology, education and security. Education में ना हो तो तभी अच्छा है. These are the things that people who defend these things need to remember. Yusuf Unjhawala, etc. We don't want a goddamn educational partnership with them. Defense relations are a key pillar of Indo-US relations today. Noting that, okay, by the way, guys, digressing a little bit, Ron DeSantis, who seems to check out my YouTube channel, I'm joking. He is the only one who magically, on whose ears my suggestion reached about defunding sociology. So he did not defund sociology completely. He has defunded DEI, gender studies, from sociology in Florida. And he is announcing his presidential run today. with Elon Musk on Twitter Spaces. He has completely snubbed the mainstream media this time. This is the first presidential candidate who is not announcing his presidential run on a mainstream news channel, and they are very pissed off with him, obviously. But he's doing it on Twitter, okay? And Elon is going to support DeSantis. Anyway, defense relations are a key pillar of Indo-US relations today, noting that the US-India defense relationship can be an anchor of stability, and given the strengthening defense cooperation in 2016, President Obama said, signed into law the United States recognition of India as a major defense partner, a unique distinction for New Delhi, which would allow it to access technologies that US's closest allies have. India was promoted to Tier 1 of the Strategic Trade Organization Authorization System, which India described as the natural conclusion of India's classification as a major defense partner. The STA-1 designation placed India alongside treaty allies Japan and South Korea. Okay. Yes, it is not considered Russian product as it has been processed in a third country. Source Jayashankar interview. Yeah, that is how stupid they are. Maximus Prime is saying education में ना हो तो अच्छा है. Someone make a plaque. Uttishta Bharat saying one of the EU member tried to oppose the trade of refined oil from India, but as usual, Gigachat Jayashankar debunked any suspicion of Russian oil by using their own constitution. एजुकेशन को दूर रखो, ये अमेरिकन यूनिवर्सिटी को इंडिया में लाकर इंडिया की ठुकवा रहे हैं. Yes, and that is what France has done. France has completely rejected wokeism studies from their country. Okay. India's military strength and ability to counter China and act as a security provider in the Indo-Pacific region are crucial for the US, which is increasingly stretched. Any sanctions on India will affect its ability and doom Indo-US ties that have been built painstakingly. Yes. Okay. This is a good argument. He's saying that USA also realizes that if they do those crap again, it will be doomed for a long time, for about 50 years now. If they do this again, if they try to play nonsense with India this time. The US waived the countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, CAATSA, on India for buying the S-400 air defense system for Russia, something it had not done even for its NATO ally Turkey, when it imposed sanctions for buying the same S-400 air defense system from Russia. Yeah, this is a good point. This needs to be kept in mind that they said see, their threats are like two cats fighting. Okay, and these are the same kinds of threats that sanction kar denge, and then they say that okay, we are not sanctioning you, bro. You are too big of a market. But they said fuck you to Turkey. We are sanctioning you, bro, for the same reason. So there's no other justification to this other than the fact that yes, they genuinely want to have friendships with India. Weapons ordered from the US have been delivered on time without any cost overruns, as against delays and price hikes India has faced from supplies from Russia. Okay, but again a caveat, they have done the same thing with Pakistan as well. Arms supplies are a geopolitical tool, and their exports are critical in advancing national interests. Arms deals are relentlessly pursued, and even Western nations compete against one another. As a significant importer of weapons, India is an important market for US and Russia weapon manufacturers who cannot afford to sanction India. India has assumed a critical role in the region's stability, with the current world order strained and increasingly insecure. Yeah, everything is world order to change ho hi raha hai. Therefore, it's tough to say that just because USA has done these things until now, they will be or they will want to do the same things in the future. Because world order thoda bahut change hoga hi. But also remember what Hindol Sen Gupta pointed out in the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash, that they're a $23 trillion economy. You all need to realize how big 23 trillion is, okay? We are 3 trillion. They are 23 trillion. So gap abhi bhi bahut hi bada hai. The balance of power is shifting to the east and India as a counterweight to China. And it is crucial for America's Indo-Pacific strategy. It serves their interests to see a well-armed India that can defend itself and play a prominent role in maintaining rules-based order in the region. Okay, this is the end of this particular argument. And so far in this entire 3-4 paragraphs, I have seen just one good argument, that a good example that they did cancel out the CAATSA sanction on India. Okay, so it's not a very strong argument. They just gave one example. Okay, fair enough. Uttisha Bharata is saying that would it be the reason that Turkey is no more of any use, Dada? Yeah, seems like it. which is why they got sanctioned. Yes, Turkey is useful as a geographical strategic B party. A long shot. Okay, argument 2 in the military department. The US will not supply critical technologies. This is what some people say. This is a legitimate argument, according to Yusuf himself. No country provides critical technologies to preserve its monopoly, security and economic interests. Even Russia, which has a stranglehold on Indian weapons purchases, does not share crucial technologies vital to India's self-sufficiency. Although India has been assembling jet engines, fighter jets, submarines, tanks and other weapon systems, it has not led to India's gaining complete know-how to make these critical weapon systems and their sub-assemblies. India imports jet, marine and tank engines even for its indigenously manufactured platforms due to the non-transfer of comprehensive technologies and the failure or lack of capacity on the Indian side to absorb technologies. Okay, so here the argument is that ये तो रशिया भी करता है, तो USA से क्यों डरना? Sharing of highly sensitive defense technologies is closely tied to political relations. Nations that hold the technologies try to shape the political choices of their recipient, which impacts strategic autonomy. Countries seeking technologies either make trade-offs or fully align with the dominant power. However, the transfer of technologies that the supplier country thinks serves their interests has taken place and continues. Russia and countries like France and Germany have also transferred technologies to India. India bought the Bofors gun from Sweden with technology transfer and has developed an updated version indigenously. Okay. So far, a significant tech transfer deal has eluded India-US defense cooperation, despite India being a quote-unquote major defense partner and elevated to strategic trade or STA-1 given to America's close allies. But the US does share technologies with its close allies. It has signaled its willingness to share highly sensitive technology under the AUKUS, Australia, UK and United States agreement to provide nuclear submarines to Australia, its close ally. Under the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative launched in 2012, India and the US looked for projects to co-develop and co-produce, but this has not borne fruit. Both sides will have to work to achieve substantial results. Okay, here in this particular argument, he has two arguments, Yusuf. He's saying that थोड़ा बहुत तो रशिया भी करता है, रशिया भी तुमको कहाँ बनाना सिखाता है, टेक्नोलॉजी तो नहीं देता है. And his second argument is that, okay, see, we are kind of a close ally now of USA, and USA is known to share those technologies with their close allies at least. So what he's saying is that just wait it out, just try a little harder, soon they will give you the technologies as well because you will prove them yourself to be a close ally of them. Okay, fair enough. Or if the ideal scenario would be that our engineers don't leave India, they get incentives to stay in India, or the places they work or companies that can hire them make them stay in India, and those companies stay in India, and therefore we can come up with these innovations in India. That is the most ideal situation. कितने दिन यहाँ वहाँ भागेंगे टेक्नोलॉजी के लिए और मैन्युफैक्चर्ड रेडीमेड प्रोडक्ट्स के लिए. Uttisha Bharata is saying, without any caveat on the issue of Australia getting sensitive information. Yeah. Isn't Yusuf trying to make the USA's lackey? He does sound like that. His paper so far sounds like that, and he definitely sounded a lot like that during 80% of the interview with Kushal Mehra, which is why I had to check, does he stand to gain from a good India-US ties? And he is an entrepreneur. He makes his company, I think, the place he works at, I think it makes screwdrivers of some kind, or screws or something. Horizon Private Limited. So who knows? But he was fair in some aspects as well. He's just making an argument that India cannot be harmed as much as you think today. Let's see. Okay. Argument 3 in the military question. Communications will not be secure if we partner with USA. Okay. This argument was made when India deliberated the Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement. India took considerable time in making up its mind to sign the deal after due deliberations within the security establishment, especially the armed forces, on matters of security and sovereignty. However, one thing I did not like about Yusuf's interview with Kushal Mehra is that he kept bringing up examples of India's presence as a strong country or Indo-US ties, which don't really mean anything at all. He kept saying, look at the support of Modi in Australia, look at the support of Modi in USA when he went there. Those things, whatever those prime ministers say on the face of it, don't matter at all. That should be remembered. And anyone who follows Indian foreign policy from YouTubers, etc., who have an interest know these things, that those matter jack shit. Because today, if Rahul Gandhi was the Prime Minister and we had so much social media, etc., or even if Mamata Banerjee was the Prime Minister, do you think she would not get the same kind of support outside? Because whoever is the Prime Minister can have enough people to sell out a stadium. Stadium में कितना लोग रखे? 30,000, 40,000, 60,000 मैक्सिमम. हमारा पॉपुलेशन है यहाँ पे 1 करोड़, 100 करोड़, 140 करोड़. तो उनके भाई भतीजे कितने बड़े हैं? किसी ना किसी का सपोर्टर मिला के 60,000 का स्टेडियम सेल आउट हो ही जाएगा. उसमें कुछ ज्यादा उखाड़ने का बात नहीं है. And the Prime Minister will obviously, if they have agreed upon a somewhat good relation and have invited our Prime Minister, they will say nice things on the face of it during that evening at least. They are not going to say, kya bhosri wale, kahan se aaya? So it does not matter at all how that event went. Okay. But Yusuf was harping on that a little too much, according to me. That as if those receptions are a proof of India's prowess. Those receptions are not a proof of anything. Whatever we get done on paper is the proof of what our prowess or power is. AIM would have some interesting views on this, yes. Okay, now, however, following the signing of the agreement in September 2018, rapid progress has been made in its implementation, enabling value cooperation. A secure communication link has been established between the Indian Naval Headquarters and the United States Central and Indo-Pacific Naval Commands. Secure communication equipment has also been activated on Indian P-8 maritime surveillance aircraft, and the selective availability anti-spoofing module GPS system in some Indian C-130 and C-17 transport aircraft. Fair enough. He's giving examples that what are the good steps, positive steps that USA has taken to mitigate these concerns. With the US installed secure communications, India and the US are able to share information on Chinese maritime movements in real time, enhancing India's maritime security. Fair argument. This has helped improve India's security, especially through real-time intelligence sharing. Amidst the ongoing conflict between India and China, India and US are sharing high-end satellite images, telephone intercepts, and data of Chinese troops and weapons deployment along the entire stretch of the line of actual control. With the help of equipments from the US, the capability of the Indian armed forces is growing. Okay. This argument is both correct and wrong. Okay. It's correct but incomplete. Whatever examples he gave as USA extending the hand of friendship is perfectly fine here. They have been doing good things. Okay. But the concern is not that. The concern is not that USA is not doing enough or something, at least in this particular context, right? The concern here is that whether our systems will be safe or not. So whether our systems will be safe or not is predicated on whether we have a good friendship at that point with USA or not. So right now we have a good friendship and we both have an enmity with China. इसलिए ये सब दोस्ती हो रहा है. What happens when we go do things that piss off USA to the extent when these systems do become a vulnerability for us? So he did not really specify that whether these systems can become a vulnerability for us in the future or not. That is my concern here. Okay, but he did point out some good things USA is doing for now, and we are talking about for now. So let's just be happy with this argument. Okay, Hindustani Bhav is saying भारत गाली देना पाप होता है, खास करके माँ बहन की. जय हिंद दोस्तों. Okay, निकल पे. AIM has views based on mostly experience. As per my understanding, he's pro-decoloniality plus pro-reality as well. Yes, he's pro-decoloniality, but he does not know that he's pro-decoloniality. That's the only thing. Okay. So new Buddhist spotted here. No. Okay. Argument 4. US weapons are expensive. Okay. Let's see. What are the counter arguments? Let me have a sip of coffee. One of the arguments against US and Western weapon systems is that they are expensive compared to the Russian systems, which is true. An illustration follows. We'll check that out as well. As the US tries to wean India from its dependence on Russia for weapons, New Delhi has told Washington that the alternatives to Russian weapons are too expensive. Okay, I need to clarify one thing. What I just said in the previous point, that the concern is whether these relations on communications can become a vulnerability for India in the future or not. You have to remember that people like S. Jaishankar or the engineers working under him, they are also aware of these concerns. So it's not really like सबका जीमेल पासवर्ड एस जयशंकर ने दे दिया बाइडेन को, ऐसा नहीं है. बट व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज दैट Yusuf Unjhawala did not really get into the meat of that particular argument. He bypassed it. I don't think S. Jayashankar is bypassing those arguments. Okay. So they are too expensive. Okay, let's check out the chart. ROE is okay. I don't get this chart. Component direct acquisition cost, benchmark price. Okay, Boeing and Roe. Okay, one is Russian, one is American. Cost of TTL based reserve, benchmark 3,862. Price in rupees in crore at the applicable exchange rate. Okay, cost of schedule 1 level servicing, that is hugely different in USA and Russia. Most are hugely different in USA and Russia. Cost of D level overhaul, operating cost. I see. Okay, capital acquisition in Indian Air Force. Okay. Okay, now let's get on. Weapons are too expensive. Okay. However, in general, US and Western weapons are technologically far more advanced, especially in the aerospace sector. The initial cost of a Western system may be high, but the life cycle cost is cheaper. Okay. And more importantly, their operation availability is higher. This is why the Indian Air Force shifted its procurement based on life cycle costs for acquiring fixed wing and rotorcraft, and bought several aircrafts from the US. The CAG report on the capital acquisition by the Indian Air Force in 2019 for India's heavy lift helicopter is a case in point. Yeah, this is in general true with most appliances, electrical appliances you buy, isn't it? Whichever costs more actually survives longer and actually consumes lesser electricity. The two vendors competing were the American CH-47 Chinook and the Russian Mi-26. Although the two crafts were mismatched in size and loads they could carry, with the CH-47 able to handle only half the load of the Mi-26, the CAG report on life cycle cost findings is very interesting. The CH-47 was a fraction of the cost of the Mi-26 on some parameters and less than the benchmark price. So much so that the total acquisition cost, considering operation cost of servicing and cost of the overhaul, was a third of the Mi-26. Can you believe that? USA's plane costed more than the Russian plane on the face of it, but सब मिला के उसका cost, servicing cost, survivability cost मिला के उसका cost 1/3 of the Russian aircraft बन गया. अरे ये सब तो हमको बनाना होगा. Besides the Mi-26 in the service of the Mi-26 in the service of the Indian Air Force has not been used optimally owing to its lower availability rate, as noted in another CAG report on the helicopter fleet. As against the requirement of 75% serviceability, the Mi-26 was reported to be between 30 and 40%. The MiG-29K in service with the Indian Navy, procured at about $45 million each, has been beset with problems. The serviceability of the aircraft has been dismal, ranging from 15.93% to 37.63%, owing to defect in engines, airframe, fly-by-wire systems. The Indian Navy has decided to go with Western options for its future acquisition, with the American FA-18 competing with the French Rafale. The FA-18 operated by US Navy currently costs $66 million and will be higher for India's acquisition. And this has an operational availability of 51%, which is way higher than the Russian plane. And its latest Block 3 upgrade has extended the service life of the aircraft from 6,000 hours to 10,000 hours, compared to the MiG-29's 6,000 hours. Dassault, the maker of Rafale, has a contractual obligation to maintain 75% availability for the Indian Air Force, which has acquired 36 jets. Okay, contract में लिख दिया है. The time between overhaul for Western jet engines and the overall service life is twice that of Russian engines, leading to lower life cycle costs and greater mission availability for the aircraft. The Russian-made aircraft carrier from which the MiG-29K operates, the Admiral Gorshkov, commissioned into the Indian Navy as INS Vikramaditya, has been beset with problems, spending more time in the docks than in the sea. I see. Okay, यहाँ साइड में फुटनोट पढ़ लेते हैं. India signed a $974 million deal with Russia for Admiral Gorshkov in 2003. Russia demanded another $1.2 billion in 2008 and then another $700 million in 2009. India finally negotiated to $35 billion in all. The carrier was slated to be delivered by 2008, but it was finally delivered in 2013. Good. This is a good point to know that Russia screwed this up really bad. The saga of the Russians increasing the price of the carrier and the delay in delivery is well known. While India pursues developing an indigenous military industrial complex and produces the weapons it needs, it will buy a mix of expensive high-tech weapons as it sees fit operationally and considering the overall cost of ownership over its life cycle from the US and other Western countries along with lower cost weapons from Russia. Okay, as far as this argument goes, I'm very much convinced with this argument that yes, US made weapons are costing us more on the face of it on the day of purchase, but in the long run they are costing us way less than whatever the Russians are selling us. This is a good argument to know. Okay, let's check out some comments once again. What is Neo-Buddhist? Nice. Maximus, right. Ask Ambedkar. Where does he live? Ask those who worship him where he lives. Okay, now Maximus is saying one thing here. The frequency of maintenance requirement is not mentioned. It's factors in with the price. Yeah, that is true. If I have to maintain the Chinook every 2 months and MiG MI every 7 months, the amounts add up. Good argument. Nice. I don't know these things. So did Yusuf purposely did not mention this? Who knows? Okay, Abhay is saying India should buy weapons from the West instead of Russia. Simultaneously indigenize defense manufacturing too. Yeah, indigenize करेंगे भी तो हमारे लाइफ टाइम में तो पूरा इंडिजिनस होगा भी नहीं, मगर पूरा हम कर भी नहीं सकते क्योंकि कुछ लोगों को खुश रखने के लिए कुछ ना कुछ चीजें उनसे खरीदना ही पड़ेगा, as we are finding out from Bangladesh. Okay, fifth argument in case of military partnership with US. US weapons will not fit in with our existing systems. This is a point that has been made by Abhijit Iyer Mitra, hasn't it? Okay, let me have a sip of coffee. I really make good coffee. Okay. This is again a legitimate argument. Acha, so Abhijit Iyer Mitra is correct in this. Weapons and sub-assemblies from one country are incompatible with platforms from another country, yeah. As the manufacturers guard their source code for security and economic reasons, yeah. For instance, France did not provide the source code to integrate the Russian R-73 missile on the Mirage 2000 fighter aircraft. This is true for both, not only for Western and Russian systems, but also between Western systems. Oh my god. Multinational European firm MBDA has refused to integrate its Meteor missile on India's Tejas fighter, which will carry an Israeli radar. Bah. However, India's indigenous weapons successfully incorporate systems from various countries apart from indigenous ones. Okay. Indian Navy warships built indigenously have engines from the US or Ukraine, radar from Israel, and Indo-Israel developed air defense system, the Indo-Russian BrahMos as its anti-ship and land attack missile, among others. Similarly, the Tejas light combat aircraft has engines from the US, radar from Israel, avionics are a mix of Indian and Israeli systems, and is capable of firing various missiles from Israel, France, Russia, and the UK, apart from indigenously developed ones. Okay. So this is not really a counter argument. He just says, yeah, bro, what can you do? It is what it is. This is hilarious. Okay, now the political arguments. Interesting. Let's check out some comments again. Maximus is saying, I am not in the position to provide an educated opinion as of yet some information is missing from my archive. Okay. I need a cigarette now. Oppu boss, you have to live long to fight for Hindus, okay? Don't die of lung cancer. Okay, don't have answers. Oh, Maximus. Okay, Maximus, okay. Okay, now the political arguments. The US will oppose India's rise. Yes, we are saying that all the time. Let's see, are we wrong or does Yusuf Unjhawala convince us otherwise? Let's see. Okay, Abhay is saying NATO countries will never give source code to integrate their weapons with Russian ones. Of course, yes. I wish, as a person who just looks at these, don't you wish sometimes that you were from another planet and you could just watch international politics from a person whose life did not matter on these things? It's just so fun and interesting to watch. Despite close defense and political ties and people-to-people contacts, there is apprehension in some quarters in India about the US, which sees it as a threat. The fears are misplaced. Okay, this will be good. Let's see. Okay, guys, our fears are misplaced about US opposing our rise. Okay, let's see. The United States considers India an indispensable partner and its relationship as one of the most consequential. From the George Bush administration onwards, it has repeatedly said that it supports India's rise because they had no idea that we will rise so fast. So let's not take seriously what George Bush said, okay? And emergence as a leading global power, USA supports these things apparently, okay? Based on a convergence of strategic interests, the United States and India continue to use their deepening relationship to build new partnerships within and beyond the Indo-Pacific. India has been the linchpin, the king for the US's Indo-Pacific strategy, cutting across administrations. This view enjoys bipartisan support in Washington. The US's Indo-Pacific strategy released by the Joe Biden administration states that we support a strong India as a partner and strive to steadily advance our major defense partnership with India and support its role as a net security provider, okay? While at the same time sending a goddamn mayor as the ambassador to India, okay? Remember that. Imagine us sending Firad Hakim as the India's ambassador to USA, okay? It's equivalent of that. Kolkata is a disaster, so is California, okay? So why don't we just send Firad Hakim as the India's ambassador to USA? उससे निपटो भाई, वहाँ जाके और भी मिनी पाकिस्तान खोल देगा. One of the USA's Indo-Pacific strategy's core lines of action is to support India's continued rise and leadership role. It considers India a quote-unquote driving force of the Quad and other regional fora and an engine for regional growth and development. Okay. India figures prominently in the US national security strategy, both in bilateral terms and working together multilaterally. Okay. Just stop strengthening India's woke voices and we'll be fine. But they are not going to stop that. In its last days, the Trump administration declassified the US strategic framework for the Indo-Pacific. One of the desired end states for the US was for India to remain preeminent in South Asia and take a leading role in maintaining Indian Ocean security. Good. Part of the overall objective hinted at in the document was to accelerate India's rise and capacity to serve as a net security provider and major defense partner and to solidify an enduring security partnership with India. Okay, this is an important point because Yusuf made this point even in Kushal Mehra's podcast that he's saying that USA does not really want to subvert Indian elections or does not want a regime change in India. They want a strong Indian state with capital S. And in that case, they don't want that 90s ka 50-party coalition government where a prime minister changes every 6 months. That will be disastrous for USA's interests in the Indo-Pacific as well. Okay, let's think about that. So in that case, with their in light of their encouragement of wokeism in India, do they have then this option in mind that okay, India may as well be a great strong state even if Modi does not remain in power? If someone from Congress, AAP or Trinamool becomes the prime minister, imagine that situation. Imagine someone from those sides becoming the prime minister and at the same time USA wanting them to be a strong state with a capital S, okay? So what I can predict from this particular statement from this document is that if BJP loses and others come to power, USA will help them to remain a strong state and lead to absolute total dictatorships in India because they don't want a weak Indian state, okay? What they have a problem right now is that it's so strong that are getting strengthened in India. What they will rather prefer is that India plays, has some love story with wokeism, destroyed its society and culture internally, and at the same time, at the state level, at the capital letter S wala state level, it's very strong and does not listen to any opposing voices. That is the dream of USA in the worst case scenario, as an end game tactic, I think. Okay, Maximus is saying Kolkata Fornia, bro. Yes. Any new developments of AMCA project? I don't know about that. Minorities are persecuted, etc. Yes. What about the religious report on India? Exactly. Isn't that against Modi and BJP also trying to subvert the elections? Exactly. It's not blanket that what USA is trying to do. Utisha is saying, oh, so they would like us subservient Saudi India. Exactly. Okay. India too has reciprocated this shift in American attitude over the past 2 decades. As far back as 2001, Then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee described the US as a natural ally. Addressing the US Congress in 2016, Modi called the US an indispensable partner and said that the relations had overcome the hesitations of history. Okay, no. Again, we can't take these statements of prime ministers while going there in front of the media and giving cool sentences as sound bites. Isko sun ke hum kya kare? Let's ignore this. Some in India, however, do not believe in this case, in the sense of natural congruence between the two sides. Okay. I don't know about you guys. I believe there can be a natural congruence between two sides, but uske liye there has to be complete, deliberate, overt, and vociferously you have to say, both sides have to say that yes, let's be allies against pattharbaz people. Otherwise, no. Some in India, however, do not believe in the sense of natural congruence between the two sides. We have to differentiate between possible congruency or ya fir is he arguing that abhi congruence ho chuka hai. This line of argument is that US-India proximity is a product of US-China frictions, which is a product of America's desire to contain China's rise as it challenges US hegemony. हाँ, इसमें गलत क्या हुआ? From this, it follows that the US will sooner or later adopt a similar containment strategy vis-a-vis in case of India as the country's power and influence grow. Yeah, obviously. This is essentially an ideological argument that isn't rooted in present-day pragmatism. Okay, let's see. It's got counter-argument. The fact is that for the foreseeable future, the US and China will compete for global supremacy. True. And India can leverage this competition to further its development. Fair enough. Even for those who think India will be next in America's crosshairs in the decades to come, the advice will be to bide the time and develop India by working with the United States and the West just like China did. Okay, it's not really a counter argument. He just said that it is what it is, suck it up, let's just move on. I don't see how this is a counter argument to anything the ideologues were saying. अरे सिर्फ ideological बोल के छोड़ दिया, counter नहीं किया. अजीब बात है. Okay, next argument in terms of ideology in the political realm. क्योंकि यूएसए ने पाकिस्तान को हेल्प किया था 71 वॉर में तो मारो गोली यूएसए को. That is the argument we are going to deal with now. Okay, let's check some comments. सुनकर चरमानंद लेकर सो जाओ फिर अगले दिन वास्तविकता में आ जाओ. US after the China debacle would not want India to be the same. Yes. आप पत्थर मारते रहे हम कश्मीर ले गए. It's time that Jordan Peterson hosts people like JSI Deepak. Okay, this is an often cited argument by those against closer India-USA relations. They argue that the USA helped Pakistan during the war that led to the creation of Bangladesh by sending the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise. Okay. Of course, this is a historical fact. Nixon sent that, yeah. The USS show of force was of little consequence as the war was over by then and India had won. Moreover, as pointed out earlier, India-US relations have come a long way from the Cold War days. Acha, we have come, it's not Cold War days exactly, but long way kaise, I don't know. Long way in terms of time, amount of time that has passed obviously, but long way in terms of actual policy differences, it's not really a long way, it's somewhat of a difference, I think. Security cooperation is a major pillar of the India-US strategic partnership in an increasingly insecure region and world. The two countries now conduct more bilateral exercises with each other than they do with any other country. Okay. These include the Tri-Services exercise, Tiber Triumph, Yudh Abhyas Army, Vajra Prahar, Special Forces, RIMPAC with Navy, Red Flag with Air Force, and several passing exercises, PASEX. The United States has also assigned a liaison officer to the Indian Navy's Information Fusion Center, Indian Ocean region. Fair enough. The two countries have signed all of the foundational security agreements. This was done after years of domestic deliberations in India, with the concerns raised by the military and strategic community being thought through. India now regards these agreements as critical in contributing to Indo-US defense ties and seeks to expand the scope of a cooperation under them. So much so that India started seeing immediate benefits from the logistics and communications agreement. Okay. India and the United States have established the first secure communication link between Indian Naval Headquarters and the United States Central and Indo-Pacific Naval Commands. The Indian Navy's P-8 maritime patrol and recon aircraft can effectively communicate in real time with the US Navy, I see, thereby allowing the two countries to share information on Chinese maritime movement. This is due to the secure American communication system. Okay, again that argument that, see, यूएसए अभी अभी इतने सारे अच्छे काम किए हैं हमारे लिए, इतने सारे दोस्ती के हाथ बढ़ाए हैं, बट what happens when we piss them off? That is the question, that is the concern that people who are against these friendships are saying. So far I'm not seeing any arguments in addressing that. He's saying that देखो दोस्ती का हाथ बढ़ा दिया, वो तो हम भी देख रहे हैं, ठीक है. दोस्ती जब नहीं रहेगा तब क्या होगा with all this dependency on each other. That is the concern I'm bothered with. This is due to the American communication system. Okay. The US strategic framework for the Indo-Pacific, declassified under the Trump administration, clearly stated that providing support to India through diplomatic, military and intelligence channels to help address continental challenges such as the border dispute with China was a key action. That India maintains the capacity to counter Chinese border provocations was one of the key desired end states, along with cooperation to preserve maritime security and counter Chinese influence. Okay. नाउ ये जो बार बार बोल रही, ये 2 बार एग्जाम्पल हो गया सेम चीज का, ठीक है, कि ट्रम्प एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ने कुछ ऐसी चीजें डिक्लासिफाई की जिसमें कि ऐसा लगता है कि दे आर रियली आवर फ्रेंड्स. ओके, तो हियर आई हैव 2 काउंटर क्वेश्चंस दैट व्हेन वर दोज रिटन जस्ट बिफोर डिक्लासिफाइंग देम? ओके, बिकॉज प्रो इंडिया कुछ लिख दिया तो चलो डिक्लासिफाई कर देते हैं, दोस्ती है दिखाने के लिए. एंड मोर इंपॉर्टेंटली, व्हाट आर दे नॉट डिक्लासिफाइंग? वहां पे वे भी तो कुछ होगा ना. तो एक डिक्लासिफाइड चीज में हमारा प्यार भरा चिट्ठी लिख दिया तो दैट डज नॉट मीन द एंड ऑफ द स्टोरी. एंड काउंटर चाइनीज इन्फ्लुएंस. The two countries have extensive consultations on a wide range of issues. Between the two governments, there are over 50 bilateral dialogue mechanisms. Okay. Establishing the 2+2 ministerial dialogue between the two countries' foreign and defense ministries indicates a close relationship between their foreign and defense policies. Yeah, fair enough. Foreign policy cannot be hung up on or litigating historical grievances. To what extent? To some extent, at least, it should be seen in light of litigating historical grievances. But only to some extent. It is about addressing current and future challenges. हाँ, करंट एंड फ्यूचर चैलेंजेस में कॉमन एनिमी है पत्थरबाज, ये एक्नॉलेज करो, नहीं तो कोई चैलेंज, कोई फ्रेंडशिप नहीं दिख रहा है मेरे तरफ से, क्योंकि अभी भी प्लेन तो पाकिस्तान को बेच रहे हो. सो वाइल वी मस्ट लर्न फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री, इट इज फुल हार्डी टू लेट इट शैकल आवर प्रेजेंट एंड फ्यूचर. और प्रेजेंट में क्या हो रहा है? पाकिस्तान को प्लेन बेच रहा है. ओके, थर्ड आर्ग्यूमेंट इन केस ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स, political opposition to India-US ties. Okay, let's check some comments again. Jordan is still an outsider on the political status of India, so it will take time and experience for him to be able to screen who has what agenda. Yeah, I will say the Bible iterations before the King George version had some sense in them, as they weren't changed according to the national interest. Yeah, ऐसा तो होगा ही. Also, they would subservient Saudi. US after China debacle would not want India to be the same. Yes. Okay. Missionary, given his huge newfound love with Bible, it is bonkers right now. Yes, but he has to admit that patharbaz are the problem. Okay, let me have a sip of coffee. You can partner with the West, but not necessarily have to be closer to the US. Okay. The United States is the heavyweight of the West. It is the largest economy, a technological powerhouse, and possesses the most powerful military, with the largest defense budget equal to the budgets of the next 9 largest defense spenders. The US is India's largest goods and services trading partner and the largest source of foreign direct investment. India is looking to attract American companies who want to diversify away from China. The US is a major arms supplier, and its defense companies investing in and developing supply chains in India are crucial for developing the military industrial complex in India. 35% of India's defense exports are to the US. Major US defense companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon have a presence in India. The US has done the heavy lifting for India in the last few years, starting with the nuclear deal and helping India get into major arms control groups. USA has done the heavy lifting. Is there a problem that you notice with the tone? I don't know. I might be too biased in judging the tone of this, I think. That I might be too suspicious in this case, that he's being too wishy-washy and mushy about USA, I think. And I did not know that someone could be more mushy about USA than me. The US has done the heavy lifting for India in the last few years, starting with the nuclear deal and helping India get into major arms control groups. Heavy lifting भाई मनमोहन सिंह ने भी किया है. बोल दिया कि अरे प्राइम मिनिस्टर का चेयर गया गड्ढे में, साइन करोगे कि नहीं बोलो. So that's also heavy lifting. As the game heats up in the Indo-Pacific with the rise of China and considering India's structural rivalry with China and the economic and military disparity between the two countries, support from US will be critical if hostilities break out between India and China. Yeah, ये बात तो 100% ठीक है. इस बारे में कोई भी disagree नहीं करता है. Other Western countries neither have the will nor the resources that the US has to provide immediate and large-scale support. The Ukraine war has shown that European powers not only heavily depend on the US for their own security, but also differ on measures that threaten their economies. India cannot expect European countries to take any serious action in case of a conflict with China. Yeah, वो हमें पता है, यूरोपिया बोल रहा हूँ, यूरोप लौड़ा उखाड़ेगा. But what I'm saying is that if US does have us in an extortion kind of situation, he seems to be defending that. That see, China जब आएगा बचाने कौन आएगा? USA आएगा. And this I expect someone from US's side to tell India, not an Indian telling Indians that देखो बचाने US आएगा. You can at best say these things in to your friends while having a discussion on foreign policies. But it's an Indian writing a paper telling Indians that see, USA will save you, be friends with them. That kind of bugs me. Okay, let's check some comments. Rohit Matre, will India be able to industrialize itself in next 20 years? Your thoughts? 100%. T-shirts with "Hold my coffee" coming soon. USA has done heavy lifting is a veiled reference to Trump era. Yeah. But he addressed the Muslims as a brethren monotheist. Exactly. He has problems. He needs to realize that. Okay. One more comment. Uttishray Singh Maximus, Bible having sense. After listening to Tovia Singer, it is very clear that the news is contradictory to the Old Testament. Yes, it's not even called Old Testament anymore. It's called Hebrew Bible. When China transgressed across the line of actual control on the Indo-Tibet border in 2020, the United States offered its full support. It provided information, cold weather clothing, and some other equipment to India. Admiral Phillips Davidson, the then commander of the USS Indo-Pacific Command, told the Senate Armed Services Committee that the activities along the line of actual control with China had opened their eyes to what cooperative effort with others might mean for their own defensive needs. The current commander of the Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral John Aquilino, testifying before the Senate Armed Services Committee, said that the US will continue to provide India with information and the equipment it needs to counter China on the LSE and continue to partner and operate together throughout the region. After the clashes in Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh between Indian and Chinese troops in December 2022, when the PLA tried to change the status quo, the Pentagon said, "We will continue to remain steadfast in our commitment to ensuring the security of our partners." Doesn't mean anything. Recently, Indian Air Force Chief VR Chaudhary said, "The neighborhood continues to remain volatile and uncertain. Amidst this volatility, we must enhance our collective strengths by partnering with the nations which share common beliefs and values." This indicates a shift in India's approach to collaborating with other countries for defense. The US features most prominently among these countries. ठीक है, statements है, it's all rhetoric. But again, his larger argument in this case was that USA बचाने आएगा जब चाइना खुजली करेगा, तो इसलिए दोस्त बन जाओ. लेकिन पत्थरबाज कॉन्वर्सेशन का क्या होगा? Okay. Maximus is saying, Jagrat, what you are saying is true. I would recommend reading both versions from a theological perspective. You will see what I'm referring to. Yeah. Okay. What is the fourth argument? Apprehension over a possible US-China grand bargain. This is a great argument actually. अगर USA और China दोस्त बन गया तब हमारा क्या होगा? Okay, let's see what his counter argument is. Given the multifaceted nature of the US-China relationship, featuring competition and cooperation, there is often a debate in India expressing apprehension over a possible G2-style grand bargain between the two countries. The idea of a G2 was floated by foreign policy experts during the first term of the Obama administration. उन्होंने ही किया है, ठीक है, G2 कर लेते हैं, जो लीडर है, जो सेकंड बेस्ट है, उसी से दोस्ती करके बाकी सबका मारते हैं. During the first term of the Barack Obama administration, when the US thought it would be possible to coexist with China peacefully and set global rules. China rejected it. Today, the relations between the two countries are at their worst, with the potential for an armed conflict over Taiwan growing. ठीक है, तो जिसने प्रपोजिशन दिया था G2 का, उसने लात खाया. अब वो बोल रहा है I want to help India counter China. So how are we supposed to trust that person? ये तो यूसुफ उंझावाला ने खुद के अपने अगेंस्ट ही एक आर्ग्यूमेंट दे दिया है, ये एग्जांपल डाल के. Under the Trump administration, the US declared China its strategic competitor. This competition has intensified under the Biden administration, which has sanctioned Chinese semiconductor chip manufacturers and seeks to actively deny them access to next-gen technologies. वो डिनाई करके क्या करेगा? चाइना तो फिर भी चोरी कर ही लेगा. It has also banned several Chinese telecoms and electronic goods manufacturers. At best, the US wants to manage relations with China so that it doesn't lead to an armed confrontation and cooperate on issues such as climate change. China cooperate करेगा climate change में, क्या बोल रहा है? A new Cold War has started, and the US believes that the next few years will set the terms of the geopolitical contest. In addition, the Quad grouping of India, Australia, Japan, and the US, which has revived in 2017 in the wake of growing Chinese assertiveness, has grown in scope. China, which dismissed the Quad as sea foam that will dissipate, now calls it a small clique and quote-unquote an effort to build an Asian NATO with a significant underlying security risk. The inclusion of Australia in the Malabar exercise in 2020 completed the Quad of their respective naval forces. The move came just months after China intruded into the Indian side of the line of actual control, initiating a standoff that is still ongoing with over 50,000 troops deployed by both sides and a major clash that resulted in the first loss of lives in 50 years in the Galwan Valley in June 2020. Okay, now in case of Australia, we need to remember that Australia is showing definite actions of friendship. Okay, let's not forget that. Australia is listening to Salvatore Babones a lot in case of USA. In case of India, they are now lessening their dependency on New York Times and Washington Post to learn about India. They are bringing on Salvatore Babones, his students, and his organization, the organization he's part of, to ask him that what is Indian politics all about? Who is the good guy? Who's the bad guy? What are the nitty-gritties of the what are the frameworks? Okay, so that is a step in the right direction. That is how you show that you really want to be friends. वो फ्रेंडशिप का एक्चुअल स्टेप्स लो. सिर्फ चीजें हमको बेचोगे, पाकिस्तान को बेचोगे, उससे क्या होगा? The US and UK deal to provide Australia with nuclear submarines under AUKUS, in another measure that Washington has taken to check China. China hit out against this, saying it would quote-unquote severely damage regional peace and stability and intensify the arms race. Japan, a treaty ally of the United States, is set to double its defense expenditure to 2% of its GDP by 2027. हाँ, और उसका प्राइम मिनिस्टर मर गया mysteriously, who was countering USA mysteriously. It has also decided to induct long-range missiles for counter-strike capabilities, citing the China threat. On more than one occasion, President Joe Biden has stated that the United States will come to the defense of Taiwan, an absolute red line for China, and committed to providing $10 billion in military aid over the next 5 years to the island nation. Okay. So here the argument is that no. वो India China US China friendship गया गड्ढे में, that ship has sailed. Now they are absolutely opposed to China, and to this I would pretty much agree, because they went to the extent of sending Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. देखो भाई, क्या गोली मारोगे, बम मारोगे, दिखाओ हमको मार के. हमारा बुद्धि स्पीकर ऑफ द कांग्रेस को भेज दिया, मार के दिखाओ. So they did go to that extent. So that does kind of prove that USA China friendship's not happening anytime soon, I guess. Okay. Rutvik is saying, I will say this again. K2O is not problem for the US specifically. Banking on this future is a huge problem. They can achieve a bloodless coup with economic sanctions. Social theology like France. Dark culture is paramount. Jagrat, I like China rejected it as a separate sentence. Auto meme. Yes. Katu. I see. Katu. Oh my god. These people are nice. So many great analogies and metaphors. Okay. K2. The US has repeatedly called out all the disputes arising from China's expansionism and has committed to a free and open Indo-Pacific uphold in free and open Indo-Pacific, upholding rules-based order. Rules-based order, acha. If someone defends USA's claim of rules-based order, immediately you need to be suspicious. यूएसए रूल्स बेस्ड ऑर्डर फॉलो करता है और उसको डिफेंड कर रहा है कि देखो यूएसए कितना अच्छा रूल्स बेस्ड ऑर्डर फॉलो कर रहा है. आई एम स्निफिंग सम बुलशिट हियर. तो यूएसए इज committed to upholding rules based order and freedom of navigation and overflight. It renamed its Pacific command to Indo-Pacific Command. Acha. What is Yusuf Unjhawala's fascination with rhetoric? पैसिफिक कमांड से इंडो पैसिफिक कमांड बना दिया, इसलिए उसको भी एक पॉइंट की तरह यूज कर रहा है कि देखो इंडिया की तरफ हाथ बढ़ा रहा है. ओके, नॉट दैट इट डजंट मैटर एनीथिंग, दे आर मे बी ट्राइंग टू हिंट दैट यस सी वी वांट टू बी फ्रेंड्स, बट इट डज नॉट मैटर इन पॉलिसी. पॉलिसी में क्या हो रहा है वही, दैट इज द ओनली एंड ओनली थिंग. पॉलिसी शोज दैट दे आर सेलिंग प्लेन्स टू पाकिस्तान. Policy shows that they are sending the Firad Hakim equivalent of USA to India as ambassador. China rejects the nomenclature of the Indo-Pacific. Achha, see, they did this to spite China, not to show friendship with India. China rejects the nomenclature of the Indo-Pacific, saying there is no such concept as Indo-Pacific. And ये चाइना का ये प्रॉब्लम कभी नहीं जाएगा. खुद का हिस्ट्री, खुद का इकोनॉमिक्स, खुद का डेमोक्रेसी, खुद का अपना आइडिया ऑफ जियोग्राफी, खुद का मैप, पूरा का पूरा अलग दुनिया में रह रहा है. No such concept as Indo-Pacific. And the United States creating it to bring in partners such as India to contain China. Achha. The competition between the two countries is not only strategic in nature but also ideological. Okay. This is again a fascination with rhetoric. Ideological war ये कहाँ से है? यूएसए का ये सब फॉरेन पॉलिसी कौन चलाता है? ट्रम्प आके चला दिया. ये सब तो CIA का लॉन्ग टर्म पॉलिसी है और वहां पे चाइनीज कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी का. उसमें आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंस क्या है? दोनों का ही ये है कि बाकी सब का मानना है. इसमें कहां से आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंस आ गया? आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंस उसके इंटरनल वर्किंग्स में हो सकता है. यूएसए में ऑब्वियसली फ्री स्पीच एक्चुअली रिमेन्स टू अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट, चाइना में नहीं है. वो आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंस हो सकता है. उसके बेसिस पे फॉरेन पॉलिसी उनका अलग है बेस्ड ऑन आइडियोलॉजी. दैट्स बुलशिट. China wishes to further its authoritarian model globally, citing its rapid economic development. It also used the havoc caused by the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, especially in the US and Europe, even as it followed a zero COVID policy, to argue that its authoritarian model was a superior system of governance. इसका काउंटर नहीं दिया. चाइना खड़ा भी ये बोल के छोड़ दिया. यूएसए ने व्हाट इज द कंपैरिजन दैट यूएसए इज इन दिस केस, वो नहीं बोला यूसुफ उंझावाला ने. According to the Pentagon, China is developing advanced military capabilities. This includes the rapid expansion of its nuclear arsenal, which is expected to triple by 2035. It is expanding its missile forces, constructing new silos, and testing advanced hypersonic weapons. Beijing is looking to undermine American influence worldwide while increasing its own through its Belt and Road Initiative and security pacts, like it has with the Solomon Islands, which is just 2,000 kilometers away from Australia, one of the US's closest allies, which is why Australia seems to be great friends with India as well now. China is unlikely to back down as it is convinced the US is on a decline, while themselves they are destined for glory. China has even linked cooperation on climate change, which is of global importance, to American policy on Taiwan. The gulf between the US and China is as enormous as the Pacific Ocean that separates them. Poetic line bhi dal diya thoda. Managing their relationship to prevent a conflict will be a significant task, let alone come together as G2. Yeah. In this case, I am convinced that yes, US-China friendship seems to be gone for now, but I am suspicious of his fascination with rhetoric. I'm saying he argued the case pretty well, even without the fascination with rhetoric that he's showing. So let's be fair to him. Okay, next argument, that USA is more critical of India's domestic policies of a particular kind than Russia and China. Yeah, because USA has wokeism, they don't. Okay, that is the argument he's going to counter now, maybe. Okay, let's see if there is any comments. I'd like to claim the Tejasvi title at this point. Is he that naive to believe in the words of leaders? Yeah, that seems to be it. That is the problem. Delhi to Indian Ocean. Ritwik Tejasvi bhai. Tejasvi Yadav yaad aa gaya. Don't worry, we have Tejasvi Surya. Yes, alright, Surya bhai, good. Yeah. Okay, let me have a sip of coffee. Okay, he's actually agreeing with this, that yes, this is a well-founded argument. The claim that US is more critical of India's domestic policies of a particular kind, which is the Hindu fascism, etc., than Russia and China. The State Department, okay, this argument itself is actually not exactly true. Okay, do you think China does not fund any wokeism in USA or India? You are absolutely wrong. Who runs WeTransfer? Anytime you open WeTransfer, what do you see? All woke art. ये वो जेंडर हो गया, ये इस रंग का बाल बना दिया, ये पैलेस्टाइन को फ्री करो. WeTransfer में पूरा दिन ये चलता है. और यूएसए में कुछ दिन पहले चाइना का स्पाई प्रोफेसर के तौर पे काम कर रहा था, वो पकड़ा गया. China is as much a funder of wokeism as people in USA are. Let's not forget that. Russia does not do these things as far as I know. But China has equal stake in wokeism when it comes to India and USA. They know wokeism will destroy these societies from inside. Okay. For example, TikTok. You know this report, right? American conservatives keep talking about this and pointing this out, that TikTok, when you open it in China, in your feed, all that is shown is that different Chinese kids working on different engineering projects, science project, fitness, etc. When you open TikTok in USA, इसका लंड काट दिया, इसका ब्रेस्ट काट दिया, इसको डॉग आइडेंटिफाई करना है, इसको पैलेस्टाइन को फ्री करना है, ये सब दिखता है टिकटॉक में. दे डेफिनेटली वांट वोकिज्म टू हैपन. चाइना एनकरेजेस वोकिज्म इन यूएसए प्रीटी ऑब्वियसली एंड ओवर्टली. सो why should we think that they don't do any such thing in India? Who has been funding Maoism for all these years? हाँ, माओइस्ट 70 साल से बोल रहा है खाने को कुछ नहीं है, खाने को कुछ नहीं है. AK-47 का पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा था? So this argument itself is kind of a straw man, that only USA does these and China doesn't do these, so USA can't be trusted. I'm saying China and USA both can't be trusted on this. So Yusuf is saying that this is a well-founded argument. The State Department report has flagged significant human rights issues, stating a lack of accountability for official misconduct persisted at all levels of government, contributing to widespread impunity. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken stated that the US is monitoring rights abuses in India. Dekho bhosri. Members of the US Congress have expressed concerns. The US media regularly publishes critical articles and editorials on India's democracy, its human rights record, and the treatment of minorities. And let me predict you one thing. Salvatore Babones is not the first and last of his kind. There are going to be more such people who will wake up to this bullshit, and we will have pro-India voices from every first world country very soon. India rejects such inferences about its domestic affairs based on quote-unquote motivated inputs and biased views. The US government has not taken any antagonistic actions and says that owing to the depth and quality of the dialogue, both countries discuss all issues as also being a pragmatic choice given the relevance of India in the US's strategic calculus. एक word salad है. ये statement में defense कहाँ है? एक मिनट फिर से पढ़ते हैं. India rejects such inferences about its domestic affairs, obviously. The US government has not taken any antagonistic actions and says that owing to the depth and quality of the dialogue, both countries discuss all issues as also being a pragmatic choice. What? English भूल जाऊंगा मैं. ये क्या sentence construction है? This does not mean anything at all. Concerns और human rights abuses जब बोल दिया है, उसके बाद क्या बोल रहा है कि antagonistic action नहीं लेते हैं हम? Of course लेते हैं. अगेन ये कैलिफोर्निया का मेयर को भेज रहा है यहाँ पे, जिसको वहां के सेनेट हियरिंग में बोल दिया है उसने कि हिज प्राइमरी कंसर्न विल बी एड्रेसिंग ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस ऑफ मुस्लिम्स एंड सीए वो प्रिवेंट करेगा. ये दिमाग में लेके वो आ रहा है, तो कहां ये डिफेंस हुआ यूएसए का? डेमोक्रेसी एंड ह्यूमन राइट्स आर द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट शेयर्ड वैल्यूज दैट ब्रिंग द टू कंट्रीज टुगेदर. फिर से रेटोरिक. दीज वैल्यूज आर पार्ट ऑफ इंडियाज ईथोस व्हिच रिफ्लेक्ट्स इन द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. अरे सबके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ही ह्यूमन राइट्स है, वो क्या करे? इट इज द बेसिस फॉर डोमेस्टिक पीस, स्टेबिलिटी, यूनिटी एंड इंटेग्रिटी ऑफ द कंट्री. While India may adopt a hypocritical stance on democracy and human rights in its dealings with countries worldwide, While India may adopt a hypocritical stance on democracy and human rights in its dealings with countries worldwide, it is in India's interests to further democracy, human rights and the rule of law at home. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? Where does India have a hypocritical stance? Is he meaning Russia in this case? ये तो अजीब criticism हो गया इंडिया का. So Yusuf is saying that India is not upholding democracy and human rights by buying oil from Russia. This is pretty stark. Upholding these values is vital for India's economic growth and getting the support of its friends and partners for its development and rise. Any internal disaffection arising from moving away from this will impact its economic growth, which is one of the key attractions for the US and the wider world in investing in India. He's saying that India should not do those bad things which USA is accusing India of, and we agree. I also say that yes, India should not have human rights abuses, but what we are disagreeing on is whether India is actually doing it or not. USA is saying that India is doing it. Yusuf is saying that India should not do it. But what Yusuf meant to do is to say that no, India does not do this at the moment, and USA is wrong. He's not really saying that. Okay, he has completely bypassed the main topic and has instead is kind of giving a suggestion that see, India should not do this. Yes, even I agree that India should not do these things, and I'm saying that India is not doing these things. Upholding these values is vital for India's economic growth. Yes, and getting the support of its friends and partners for its development and rise. Yes. Any internal disaffection arising from moving away from this will impact its economic growth. Yes, which is one of the key attractions for the US and the wider world in investing in India. ये गलत है. तो सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ इतना प्यार मोहब्बत कैसे है? It will also divert India's attention from playing a vital role in countering regional and global security challenges that make it an indispensable partner for the US. आज तक उइगुर मुस्लिम को लेकर कुछ सऊदी अरेबिया बोल नहीं पाया, पाकिस्तान नहीं बोल रहा है, यूएसए का कोई बिजनेस नहीं बोल रहा है. तो ये आइडियोलॉजी और ह्यूमन राइट्स का प्यार मोहब्बत किसी का भी नहीं है. No one should claim it. They are absolutely using deliberately just as a weapon against India to keep Indian pro-India voices in check or India's demands in check. There's nothing more or less than that. It will also divert India's attention from playing a vital role in countering regional and global security challenges that make it an indispensable partner for the US. If India is not able to do that owing to any possible domestic strife, it will make it a less attractive partner, which could actually make it vulnerable to adverse international positions on its domestic policies. Yes, we are not doing that. We don't have any plans of doing that. But they are saying that we are doing it anyway. तो हम अगर नहीं कर रहे हैं और वो फिर भी बोल रहे हैं तो हम काउंटर किसे करें, खुद को या उनको? Close India-US relations with an eye on the larger strategic canvas will help draw support for domestic issues of India's concerns and help in free and frank discussions on various issues and create better understanding as well as address concerns and misconceptions. For example, the Trump administration supported India in revoking Article 370 related to Jammu and Kashmir, calling it strictly an internal matter. Yes, and that is why Trump is different from the rest of the Republican Party. That's why Trump got fucked by the Republican establishment. This is a far cry from their position till the better part of the 1990s when the US sided with Pakistan on the Kashmir issue. Along with France, the US prevented China from bringing Kashmir to the agenda of the UN Security Council after India revoked Article 370 in August 2019. This is a Trump issue. This credit goes to Trump, not to Republicans, not to CIA, not to India, US state, US society in general. This is the credit of alone Trump and his close friends, his Jared Kushner, etc. President Biden, while praising India's handling of COVID, said, PM Modi's success has shown the world that democracies can deliver. The point is, as friends, both nations can freely raise and discuss all issues. The rules-based order that the two countries champion begins at home. See how wrong this argument is, because Biden और Trump दोनों को equate करने का एक effort he was putting in. No, तो Biden का क्या example दिया? अच्छा, कोविड में कितना अच्छा हैंडल कर लिया, उसके बेसिस पे एक सुंदर लाइन सुना दिया. और ट्रंप ने क्या किया? एक्चुअली एक रिस्की पॉलिसी में इंडिया को सपोर्ट कर दिया. Where is the equivalence with Biden and Trump in this case? That is why I'm saying only Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy are good for India, no one else. Okay, next argument. Let me have a sip of coffee and check some comments. Nina is saying CCP these days is as powerful as the ISI or CIA, if not more. Yes. And to be fair, when were they not? Maybe 50 years ago they were not. For the last 20 years they have been. This is where the phrase democratically elected autocratic national was used in veiled context. Yes, electoral autocracy. मैक्सिमम थिंक ठीक उल्टा मुस्लिम कंट्रीज ने चाइना का डिफेंस दिया ऑन 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 उइघुर यस आलूसोना आरएनडी ওটা ফাটিয়ে দিয়েছে আলুসোনা ইলন ট্রাম্প yes or Ramaswamy Trump Ramaswamy I think is the future because China made sovereignty the political axiom. We just need economic development. Honestly, we have enough smart people. True, or and a lot of smart people need to remain in India. Okay, next argument which he faces is that India will not be able to carve out independent political positions if it gets closer to the US. Yeah, seems like it. Let's see what his counter argument is. An argument is made that increasing reliance on the US will inevitably constrain India's foreign policy choices. Again, this discounts India's agency and historical record of taking independent positions and smacks of an inferiority complex. Okay, now he's accusing us of inferiority complex, but it's not entirely fair because India did put sanctions. No, ऐसा नहीं है कि हमारा बहुत अच्छा हिस्टोरिकल रिकॉर्ड है ऑफ टेकिंग इंडिपेंडेंट पोजीशंस एंड एज इफ वी डिडंट गेट फक्ड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट. न्यूक्लियर बम बनाने के लिए हमको तो झेलना पड़ा, तो झेल लिए इसके वजह से वो बार बार करते रहे. दैट कैन बी एन आर्ग्यूमेंट. India maintained an independent position on various issues in the last century when it was a much weaker and smaller economy, let alone now when it is on the rise and set to become the third largest economy in the world by the end of this decade. India is on its side, as External Affairs Jaishankar famously quipped in response to a question on whose side India was on. Yeah, India is on its side. This shows India's confidence in guarding its interests and not submitting to pressure. अरे भाई एस जयशंकर ने cool line बोल दिया, उससे मजा आ गया इसको. India demonstrates its independent stance when it buys weapons from Russia. Yes. And how it votes at the United Nations. Yes. But that is not the argument. He is saying that, see, India is doing such cool things on the international front. But the argument is not that. The argument is not that we are right now a weak nation and we are saying, "Arey bhai, humko kuch de do." What the argument is that we are saying that if we keep increasing the friendship with USA, will we have the same kind of autonomy? Okay, मेरा नेट ठीक है तो एक मिनट, मेरा नेट चला गया क्या? Let me check. Okay, yeah, net seems fine. Okay. Sanctions against Russia. India demonstrates its independent stance when it buys weapons from Russia and how it votes at the United Nations, sometimes despite pressure from the West. India is continuing to buy oil from Russia amidst the war on Ukraine and despite pressure on it not to do so. Early during the Ukraine war, a US official warned of consequences for any country, including India, that conducts a local currency transactions through Russia's central banks or constructs a payment mechanism that subverts or circumvents the United States sanctions against Russia. Okay, he is giving US threats to India to prove that US won't threat India. This is a very weird argument. Now, अब तक बोल रहा था कि देखो यूएस कितना दोस्ती का हाथ बढ़ाया, अब बोल रहा है कि देखो यूएसए ने थ्रेट दिया, हमने तो झेल लिया, तो क्या प्रॉब्लम है? दिस इज वेरी वियर्ड, दिस इज वेरी क्रीपी, एंड मोर सो बिकॉज द आर्ग्यूमेंट इज नॉट व्हाट इज हैपनिंग राइट नाउ. द आर्ग्यूमेंट इज दैट if we have so much friendship, if we depend so much on the friendship with USA, future में क्या होगा? But as the war dragged on, there was a change in the US's position on India's dealings with Russia. In fact, the US Treasury Secretary stated that the United States is happy for India to continue buying as much Russian oil as it wants, including at prices above a G7 imposed price cap mechanism. The US perhaps realizes it's not worth ruining the India-US relationship over Ukraine, keeping in mind the larger convergences on other issues, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. Any country's choices in international relations are based on its national interests and relative power. Yeah, any trade-off owing to a power differential is made keeping national interests in mind. For example, India stopped buying oil from Iran under pressure from the US, keeping its larger interests in mind. I see. Okay. Even India's stance on Russia, while showing an independent stance, can be considered a choice of constraint owing to India's dependence on Moscow for weapons and spares. अच्छा, तो he's saying that see, India और Russia का जो तेल खरीदने का बात है उसमें भी दोस्ती कहाँ है, उसमें भी थोड़ा constancy है, उसमें भी you are operating according to your tied up hands. As close partners, India will be able to negotiate better on matters that impact its strategic interests. Okay. India will be able to negotiate better on matters that impact its strategic interests as close partners. अच्छा तो बोल रहे हैं कि if you become close partners with USA then negotiation अच्छा होगा, इसलिए दोस्ती कर लो. It can also help India extract concessions for taking a conciliatory stance on relevant issues. I'm not that convinced in this case. Okay, next argument. उससे पहले थोड़ा कॉफी पीते हैं. Okay. Any more comments or what? Okay. Argument 7. Closer partnership with the US will lead to India antagonizing Russia and lose its leverage over China. This is an argument that people say that USA से अगर ज़्यादा दोस्ती हो गया तो रशिया को गुस्सा आ जाएगा और तब हम चाइना के सामने वल्नरेबल हो जाएंगे, इसलिए दोस्ती मत करो यूएसए से. Yeah, I don't agree with this argument myself. An argument is made that India should not antagonize Russia as it will lead to a closer Russia-China axis, and that India can use Russia to exercise a moderating influence over China or shape the Russia-China relationship in a manner that is not against Indian interests. This is why India remains in the multilateral groupings like RIC, BRICS and SCO, despite China's overbearing presence and the adversarial relations between India and China. Firstly, does India have leverage over Russia to influence its policies? In fact, India depends on Russian weapons, which gives Moscow leverage over New Delhi's choices. I think यहाँ पे rhetoric का एक word choices का एक गलती है कि he keeps on saying, he's now said about 3 to 4 times that India depends on Russia for weapons. India depends on Russia for weapons. अरे भाई, हम खरीद रहे हैं उससे पैसों से. Russia also depends on this money. फ्री में नहीं दे रहा है. तो इंडिया डिपेंड्स ऑन रशिया फॉर वेपन्स, इट्स अ लिटिल ओवरस्टेटेड. द ग्रेविटी ऑफ द सिचुएशन इज ओवरस्टेटेड. तो फर्स्टली, डज इंडिया हैव लेवरेज ओवर रशिया टू इन्फ्लुएंस इट्स पॉलिसीज? इन अ वे येस, बिकॉज वी कैन से दैट हम कल से तुमसे प्लेन नहीं खरीदेंगे. ढूंढ लो कहाँ और दोस्त ढूंढना है, ढूंढ लो, प्लेन उसको बेचो, पाकिस्तान को बेचो जाके. Secondly, Russia is not interested in containing China. On the contrary, the two countries declared a no-limits partnership in February 2022 on more than one occasion. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Russia-China relations are at their best in history and declared Russia as China's number one partner and called China its highly reliable partner. Yeah. In December 2020, just months after the deadly Galwan clash between India and China, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, during his visit to New Delhi, blamed the West for having adopted an aggressive and devious policy to engage India in quote-unquote anti-China games by promoting Indo-Pacific strategies, absolving China of its aggression instead of making even a neutral statement, let alone come out in support of India, its so-called privileged strategic partner. Yeah, this is a good point. This is a very good point he has made, that he's saying that अरे भाई, 2 दिन पहले रशिया भी चाइना को सपोर्ट कर रहा था. इतना रशिया से प्यार कहाँ से आ गया? Russia and China are increasingly cooperating in the military domain with joint naval, air and land warfare exercises. The two are conducting strategic bomber patrols and intelligence cooperation, and for the first time in history, Russian and Chinese bombers landed on each other's airfields during an exercise. Russian President Putin also vowed to help China develop advanced weapons, including ballistic missile defense. Incidentally, India's nuclear deterrence against China is based entirely on ballistic missiles. There are fears that Russia and China are developing joint operational capabilities and are in an alliance, which they might very well be, क्योंकि उन दोनों का ही biggest enemy है USA. The ongoing war in Ukraine has weakened Russia and increased its dependency on China, practically reducing it to a junior partner of China. With economic sanctions on Russia, China's leverage over Russia has increased. That is true. China is Russia's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade crossing $150 billion. China is the biggest buyer of Russian oil, and Russian natural gas exports to China have increased by 60% amidst the Ukraine war. In contrast, India's trade with Russia was $13 billion in 2021, jumped to $27 billion in 2022, due to surge in oil imports by India. Good. Russia will increasingly depend on China for semiconductors and electronics for defense equipment. Increasingly depend based on what? ऐसा क्या उनमें agreement हुआ है? क्योंकि ये सेमीकंडक्टर तो अभी हम भी बना लेंगे और 5 साल में, और लिथियम भी हमारे पास है, तो वो भी रशिया को खरीदना पड़ेगा. Chinese exports to Russia of microchips doubled in 2022. And अरे हमारा वेदांत का सेमीकंडक्टर चिप प्लांट होने दो. And other electronic components and raw materials, some with military applications, have increased. India will run the risk of China having backdoors in its weapons, in the weapons it buys from Russia, severely impacting its security. New Delhi has to worry about the leverage Beijing has over Moscow and how it can influence Russia's policy towards India, especially military supplies if war breaks out. India also has to worry about how Beijing can influence Moscow to get access to Indian weapons supplied by Russia to gain an advantage in a war, or worse, disable them with cyber attacks. This is very much a concern. This is absolutely true. As argued earlier, Russia is already in a strategic embrace with China, true, over which India has no influence, pretty much true, nor is India the reason for it, true. India does not seek an antagonistic relationship with Russia, even as Modi advised Putin that today's era is not for war. India has not condemned Russia's war in Ukraine and abstained from the resolutions against Russia at the UN. However, Russia's actions have been detrimental to India over the last few years. Okay, what Yusuf is saying about Russia is 100% true. But he did not take this tone in case of criticizing USA's policies against India. That is my concern with this person, or with this paper, with the tone of his demands or hopes, his wishful thinkings. That is what is interesting and fishy about this. Russia's action have been detrimental to India over the last few years. Hasn't India's action, USA's actions been detrimental to India for the last few years? Yes, they have done good things for us as well. But haven't they done things that have been detrimental to India? Are? Russia's growing strategic ties with China, its policy on Afghanistan, where it excluded India as a dialogue partner while including Pakistan, deepening defense cooperation with Pakistan, and even its positions at the UN, including on the Kashmir issue. It is unlikely to be a slip of tongue when the Foreign Minister Jaishankar, in the presence of Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, said that Indo-US ties are cordial and time-tested. India intended to deliver a message. Acha. Good. More than anything else, any degradation of Indo-Russia relations will be collateral damage due to the China factor, as a weak Russia plays second fiddle to the Middle Kingdom, and India's ties with Beijing continue to deteriorate. At the same time, India seeks to develop other partnerships to protect its interests. Yeah, fair enough. However, Russia's embrace of China may not last forever. Both countries have come together to counter the common enemy, the US. Even though China and Russia have settled their boundary disputes, both are expansionist powers, and China lays claim to all its so-called historical lands, which includes parts of Russia. Russia has concerns over China's presence in its far east, and also growing influence in Central Asia, what it considers to be its sphere of influence. But remember, Mongolia को हमने $1 billion का line of credit दे के रखा है. As India defied Western pressure to buy oil from Russia amidst its war in Ukraine and its seemingly neutral position, it has increased New Delhi's value for Russia. In its recently issued foreign policy update, it states that Russia will continue to build up a particularly privileged strategic partnership with the Republic of India, with a view to enhance and expand cooperation in all areas on a mutually beneficial basis. As India's national power increases, it will automatically increase its leverage over Russia in the future. Yeah, this argument was pretty much okay. Pretty good. That we do need to be skeptical about Russia. Okay. Let me check the comments. Acha, my comment section was frozen for a while. So I'll just look at the comments for a while. Nina is saying this is flawed on so many levels. Lol. This whole paper is like a closeted gay goth teen trying to come out of the closet. Kind of, yes, that is the problem. It's like pushing a 13-year-old child on a tricycle with no mobility in its legs. Coming out of the closet is moksha in Western philosophy these days. Yes, true. Has anyone seen the Israeli missile called Laura? Oh, Laura. We need that. Then tell Pak Laura phek ke marenge. Yes, good. You all should be hired as the spokespersons for our foreign ministry. India mein to bund destroyer hai na. Yes. Okay. Next argument is that the US will drag India into its wars. I absolutely agree with this argument. USA will want to, we won't, or maybe we'll end up having to, depending on what our situation is with China. But let's see what his counter argument is in this case. Okay, let's also check what did he say. Yeah, okay. India is not a small power that can be pushed or coerced into joining another country's war. India, is it really? India does not even vote with the West at the UN on various issues and takes independent positions, as seen most recently in the Ukraine conflict. Not all of the United States allies have fought alongside in its wars. Acha, example देखते हैं. France and Japan stayed away from the US-led wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. On the other hand, countries like Australia join in for security reasons because they regard their alliance with the US as critical. The AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine deal for Australia is essentially a reward for being a steadfast partner of the US. Yeah, true. Fighting every war with it, beginning with World War I. One of the reasons the India-US partnership is growing, particularly in the military domain, is that India is an independent actor capable of taking care of itself rather than relying on alliance partners. India has the third highest military budget after the US and China. This is unlike some of the wealthier allies of the US, who have not been spending enough on defense and have been relying mainly on the US for security. This was appended by Donald Trump during his presidency when he scolded NATO allies for not spending enough on defense. Yes, सब पैसा साला यूएसए अकेला स्पेंड करेगा, नेटो वहां पे यूएसए का पैसा खा के मोटा होते रहेगा और बोलेंगे कि देखो भाई सोशलिज्म कितना अच्छा काम कर रहा है हमारे देश में. The US doesn't have the appetite for wars after it costs. The US doesn't have the appetite for wars after its costly wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, ultimately leading it to retreat. हाँ, ये सब पेपर में लिखने के लिए ठीक है. थोड़ा एस्टेब्लिशमेंट रिपब्लिकन या एस्टेब्लिशमेंट डेमोक्रेट को आने दो, देखते हैं कितना एपेटाइट नहीं है. ठीक है, वो लॉकहीड मार्टिन का एम्प्लॉयर्स का पेट कैसे चलेगा बिना वॉर के, ये फालतू का बात है. There are concerns among US allies over its commitment to fight for them, which means a reduced likelihood of pressure on India to join any wars. This is true. Pressure अभी कम तो definitely है. ऐसा नहीं है कि हमको fight करना ही पड़ेगा. In any case, the decision will be for India to make in its best interest and deal with eventualities arising from it. Yeah, pretty much true. Okay, next argument is collaboration with the US will force us to implement arms control and denuclearization. Okay. I did not know of this argument. Let's see. Okay, let me check comments again. Right. USA help in Ukraine. India in full Sanjay Dutt fashion. Nahi. Okay. So collaboration with the US might lead us to implement arms control and denuclearization. ये तो भाई हम जिंदगी में नहीं करेंगे. This line of thought is held by those who have historical baggage and are out of touch with current reality. Yeah, I don't think this is a fair enough argument. ये कभी नहीं होगा. 100-200 सालों में नहीं होगा. अगर कोई साउथ कोलकाता या साउथ बॉम्बे के वोकेस्ट कोई 16 साल की बच्ची को डिफेंस मिनिस्टर बना दिया तब होगा, नहीं तो नहीं होगा ये. Yes, until the late 1990s, the US and the West wanted India to abandon its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. However, relations began to deepen around the turn of the century as both countries' security interests converged. The US worked to include India in arms control regimes like Missile Technology Control Regime, Australia Group, and the Wassenaar Arrangement. A clean waiver preceded this in the Nuclear Suppliers Group, whose membership for India was vetoed by China. The US supports India's intercontinental ballistic missiles, missile defense, and anti-satellite weapons, and has long since stopped calling for a rollback of nuclear weapons. It acknowledged India's possession of nuclear weapons with a clean waiver at the NSG, good, fair enough, calling India a country possessing quote-unquote advanced nuclear technology. Indian defense and space-related entities were removed from the US's entities list to expand cooperation in space and defense technologies. India will likely be part of any future arms control mechanism on anti-satellite weapons or hypersonic vehicles rather than being kept out and denied technologies. Yeah, true. This is true. Also known as yes, righteous war which kills somehow civilians in huge numbers. Spread democracy. He forgot Americans need to spread democracy every few years. Yes. with the help of precise weapon technology, we are going to spread democracy. Okay, yeah, that is what. If for some reason हमारे पास तेल होता, और जैसे कि कुछ दिन पहले कौन बोल रहा था, संजीव सान्याल, आई थिंक, या संजीव सान्याल ने बियर बाइसेप में बोला कि भाई सिर्फ अगर ऐसा देश या सोसाइटी होते जो कि अपने रिसोर्सेज पे डिपेंड करता है, तो हमारा हाल भी यूएसए जैसा ही होने वाला था. वैसे भी उनके प्रोफेसर्स को लगता है इंडिया में डेमोक्रेसी खत्म हो गया है, और यहाँ पे अगर तेल या लिथियम और भी ज़्यादा मिल जाए तब तो लगेगा हाँ भाई चलो डेमोक्रेसी लाते हैं. इंडिया कैन हैव अ ट्रांजैक्शनल रिलेशनशिप विथ द यूएस. अच्छा, ये तो अच्छा आर्ग्यूमेंट हुआ. दिस शुड इम्प्रेस यूसुफ. नो, आई डोंट गेट दिस. All partnerships are based on the convergence of interests and maximizing gains. International relations are devoid of altruism. Since the 1990s, India has recognized the importance of strengthening ties with the United States. With China's rise, the West seeks a counterweight, and India requires the West not only for development but also to take on China, with whom it is locked in a border conflict and strategic competition. This does not imply that India must form an alliance with the West or abandon its engagement with other countries with whom the US and the West may have antagonistic relations, but with whom India has or wishes to develop closer ties. It won't limit India's flexibility in light of its expanding influence and significance on the world stage. As Jaishankar said, India's choices in matters of its foreign relations will not be cynical and transactional, but based on a balance of its values and interests. That they have shown this. They have sent help to assholes like Turkey. India's partnership with the US has been carefully thought out in its enlightened interests and developed over 3 decades. Close partnership based on trust rather than cynical transactional helps maintain predictable long-term relations, which will help maximize the gains from the partnership. Yeah, that seems like it. Jaishankar is actually walking the talk in this case. Okay, next argument is that the US is hypocritical, topple democracies and work with dictators while promoting democracy and human rights. Okay. Yes, this is true. Even the US media is critical of it. The US has toppled the US media is critical of it. ये कैसे बोल दिया? Which US media is critical of it? They have never criticized it. All mainstream liberal news sources have been in support of the Iraq war from day one. They have been critical of it only when Trump was in power. ओबामा ने मुस्लिम अमेरिकन सिटीजन को सीरिया में उड़ा दिया, लीबिया में स्लेवरी ला दिया. कहाँ कौन मीडिया ने क्रिटिसाइज किया? ये क्या लाइन है? दिस इज 100% रॉन्ग. आज भी फॉक्स में अकेला टकर कार्लसन था जो कि थोड़ा बहुत एंटी वॉर था. ये शॉन हैनिटी कहाँ एंटी वॉर है? ठीक है. और वो जो जर्नलिस्ट है ब्राजील का, वो होमोसेक्सुअल ब्राजीलियन जर्नलिस्ट है ना, ग्लेन ग्रीनवॉल्ड, ही इज बीइंग ऑस्ट्रेसाइज्ड एवरी टाइम बिकॉज ही इज सो एंटी वॉर. तो यूएस मीडिया इज क्रिटिकल ऑफ यूएसएस वॉर्स, ये कहाँ से आया? The US has toppled democracies and worked or allied with dictators and authoritarians. However, geopolitics is rife with hypocrisy. ठीक है. That is a true statement. At the heart of it all is achieving strategic goals. Shared values can bring relevant countries together to serve common interests. Alternatively, such ideals can be used as a pretext to impose policy or actions against countries that are not friendly to achieve specific goals, while in other cases, not allowing values to get in the way of working with friendly dictators. Yeah. While India does not believe in promoting democracy and human rights as a foreign policy objective, at its core, India wants countries worldwide to be democratic and value human rights. It supports various such initiatives without appearing to intervene in domestic affairs. However, India does not let this prevent it from cooperating with dictators where its national security objectives require it. Okay, in this case, he's actually criticizing USA, I think, but all except the first sentence. He is saying that, India is so good, India does not do these things, while USA has been known to do these things. One example is India's relations with Myanmar and the military junta. India took a strong stance against the junta's suppression of the pro-democracy uprising in the late 1980s. As China made significant inroads into Myanmar through the supply of weapons, India began a rapprochement in the late 1990s. India supported the democratic government following the election in 2015. However, following the coup in 2021, India maintained contact with the military junta while expressing concern about the brutal suppression and condemning the execution of pro-democracy activists. India has developed close strategic ties with Gulf monarchies, which do not have a stellar human rights record. Even we are about to have, it's any day now that we are going to have a Taliban embassy in New Delhi. It's only a matter of time. We have already trained their people in India. You all know, right? On the other hand, India sent in its forces to prevent a coup in Maldives when its interests demanded, counted amongst the finest operations in India's post-independence military history. India has helped in preventing coups in Mauritius and Seychelles. Okay. Yusuf's argument is that India is equally hypocritical as USA. As a major rising power, India will almost certainly make contrasting decisions in similar situations to protect its interests. India has its own agency and should not be concerned about the West's hypocrisy in other parts of the world. India should only be concerned with collaborating with the West for its development. Because India has also been hypocritical in case of Mauritius and Seychelles. This is an interesting argument, okay? Let me have a sip of coffee. Taliban embassy. Yes, Taliban embassy होगा ही होगा. बहुत जल्दी होगा. Okay, Fidel Castro oil নাতি তো কানাডাতে অ্যাবসলিউটলি ডেমোক্রেসি চালাচ্ছে. ইয়েস এক্স্যাক্টলি. তাও যে কেন ওটাকে কনস্পিরেসি থিওরি বলা হয়, এই তো ভিকটিম অফ রিয়ালিটি হ্যাজ এন্টার্ড দ্য চ্যাট. ओके, ये कौन से पेज में हैं हम? 39. ऑलमोस्ट हो गया है आई थिंक. ओके, आर्ग्यूमेंट नया है कि द यूएस विल नॉट अलाउ इंडिया टू टेक बैक पाकिस्तान ऑक्युपाइड कश्मीर. I don't think so. I don't agree with this argument in the first place. So I'll be with Yusuf if he counters this. Pakistan occupied Kashmir is an integral part of India. I don't think USA gives that much crap about this. And as declared by the Parliament Resolution of 1994, India seeks to have physical jurisdiction of the territory one day. However, it is not a piece of cake that India can take and eat at a time of its choosing. If that were the case, it would have done so already. Okay, to be fair, I said one thing wrong, that USA does not give a crap, but that depends on who comes to power. If Ilhan Omar becomes president, तब तो हो गया, तब तो IOK भी लेकर युद्ध हो जाएगा. Whether India takes back POK militarily or not will be determined by sound political calculations as well as the ability of the Indian military and economy to carry out the mission successfully. Yes, and Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, they need to be president. While the US will promote peace, it is unlikely that it will be able to stop India if it decides to launch such an operation, especially if it is provoked by a terror attack on India or aggression by Pakistan, as it has done several times in the past. India will do what is necessary to protect its interests and territorial integrity. ठीक है, अच्छा dialogue है. However, as declared by India's PM, today is not an era for war. Despite comments from ministers and members of parliaments, members of India's ruling party about military measures to retake POK, it is unlikely that India will try to resolve the Kashmir issue militarily in the near or medium term, because it would divert attention away from its primary goal of fully developing the country. I agree with this 100%, because I think POK will not be taken militarily. I think POK will be taken with some financial incentive for Pakistan, and maybe a surprise might come before 2024 as well, that अच्छा ए भिखारी इधर आ POK देगा, ये ले थोड़ा पैसा ले. I think that sort of a situation might happen. Okay, next section is the economic technological case for close India-US ties. Prime Minister Modi has said, in every sector of India's forward march, I see the US as an indispensable partner. ठीक है. Okay, let's take some comments. दादा नसीम तालेब के কেমন লাগে? খুব ভালো লাগে. হ্যাঁ ভাই, নাসিম তালেবের কি সিন? Yes, I love নাসিম তালেব. উনি হঠাৎ বললেন যে জিহাদিদের অ্যাক্টিভিটির পিছনে ইসলাম দায়ী নয়. ও মাই গড, দেন ইটস ইজ আ প্রবলেম. ইট ইজ কালচার বলেন উনি. ইট ইজ আ প্রবলেম. হি ইজ নট মুসলিম হিমসেলফ. হি ইজ আ ক্রিশ্চিয়ান হু ওয়াজ কিকড আউট অফ Lebanon by Muslims. This is hilarious. Okay. Can you make a channel UPI to circumvent YouTube taxes? Yes, I have a UPI. It's given in my description box. Okay. Nirajan Shah 83 at OK HDFC Bank. Okay, now let's see. Prime Minister Modi is saying USA is a partner. Now, India's close strategic partnership with the US in the military and political domains is ultimately linked to its primary goal, which is economic development. As a close partner, India is now leveraging the polarized world to position to position itself as a reliable alternative to China for global supply chains, particularly for the United States. In 2021, India-US bilateral trade in goods and services reached a record $157 billion, making the US India's largest trading partner and export market. Similarly, trade with the EU stood at over $116 billion in 2021-22, making it India's second largest trading partner after the US and the second largest destination for Indian exports. India has a trade surplus with both the US and the EU. The figure stands at $35 billion for the UK and $34.3 billion for Australia. Collectively, the West accounts for a third of India's merchandise exports. The US, UK and EU are the major markets for India's IT software and services exports of $178 billion, accounting for 62%, 17% and 11% of the total ITES exports, respectively. The world has entered a new Cold War. With the rise of an assertive China, great power competition has returned. Trade has been politicized, securitized, and weaponized. To maintain it, trade was always politicized. हमारा न्यू लिबरलिज्म, ग्लोबल सिटीजन, अरुंधति रॉय बोलती फिरती, ये सब क्या था? It was always politicized against someone or the other. मार्क्सिस्ट और लिबरल्स दुनिया चल रहा था, इसलिए समझ में नहीं आया कि it was being politicized against indigenous traditions or Hindus. To maintain its dominance over current and future technologies, the US has banned Chinese telecom and electronic companies on security grounds, imposed tariffs on Chinese imports, and sanctioned the sale of chips, its technology, and machines used to manufacture them. The EU imposed sanctions on China and has frozen its trade deal over Beijing's treatment of the Uyghurs. The EU has... अरे EU इतना क्या गांडू लोग. See, EU में वोकिज्म इतना commonplace हो गया है कि they keep shooting themselves in the foot with these policies. American academics and discourse creators are saying these things that Uyghur Muslims need to be looked after, etc. But उनका खुद का देश को कुछ आता जाता नहीं है उस डिस्कोर्स से, मगर वो पढ़ के EU अपने आप को पैर में गोली मार रहा है. And they hope that India does the same, which we are not doing as well. The EU has also enacted rules to curb the takeover of its companies by state-backed foreign companies, with China as the intended target. Decoupling is well and truly underway. As a large economy with 1.4 billion people and shared values of democracy and the rule of law, India figures prominently in the Indo-Pacific strategies of the United States, United Kingdom and the European Union. ये बार-बार ये shared values of democracy क्यों बोल रहा है? Shared values से क्या होता है? Shared values से कुछ नहीं होता है. वो योगा लेकर 2-3 लाइन बोल देंगे, हो जाएगा shared value. The United States is promoting the idea of friend-shoring with trusted partners to diversify its supply chains away from China. Trade and strategic ties will almost certainly be linked in the coming years as the superpower rivalry heats up to deny China technological and economic gains while minimizing supply chain risks. India, which has a large young population, is hoping to benefit from the decoupling by attractive investments. Its close strategic ties with the US and the EU give it an advantage over the competition. India cannot do everything indigenously. Even the mighty West can't in an interlinked world due to costs, lack of manpower, natural resources, processing and production facilities. True. Consider the semiconductor industry, which is projected to be $1 trillion industry by 2030, and one over which strategic competition is underway between the US and China, and both are vying for supremacy and self-sufficiency. The US accounts for only 10% of global semiconductor manufacturing, and none of the most advanced chips. I see. While the US leads in designing chips, the production is largely in Taiwan, with equipment made in the Netherlands. To meet the capacity needs for critical semiconductor applications, the US needs to add about 5.5% of the global production. This equates to about 18 to 20 fabs and about 70 to 90,000 total fabs jobs. Every country, including India, wants a pie of this huge and vital industry. India lacks relevant technologies, know-how, know-why, as well as inadequate research and development and capital. True. The pitch behind Make in India and Make for the World is to attract foreign manufacturers. India has implemented production-linked incentives, true, to create an ecosystem for current and future semiconductor and electronics technologies. Yeah, India can develop its industrial base by integrating into the West's supply chain, which is why India has been vocal in driving the Quad's resilient supply chain agenda and launched the supply chain resilience initiative with Japan and Australia. Yeah, it is a strategy for positioning India as a manufacturing hub for Western countries, leveraging its cheap, abundant, and skilled labor. True. Not only does India want investments to provide jobs for its large population, it also seeks employment opportunities in the West, especially for its highly skilled professionals. Yeah, which is why the movement of people is one of the key clauses in the free trade agreement with Australia, which considers the Indian diaspora as there as a national economic asset. The movement of people is also a key issue for India in its negotiations for trade agreements with the US, EU, and UK. Western countries have become the largest source of foreign remittances to India, which has surpassed $100 billion in a year for the first time for any country in the world, with remittances from the US leading the way with 23.4% of all remittances, surpassing the UAE, which had previously been the top source for India. According to the World Bank, remittances have benefited from a gradual structural shift in Indian migrants' key destinations from largely low-skilled informal employment in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries to a dominant share of high-skilled jobs in high-income countries such as the UK, US, East Asia, and like Singapore, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. The large Indian diaspora in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia is among the most prosperous and politically influential. True. US Vice President is a person of Indian origin. That does not matter shit. As well as several top officials in the US administration. The Prime Minister of the UK is a PIO. And so is the Home Minister. The MEA countries. No. The Home Minister of UK is not really of Indian origin. She is of Indian African origin. The MEA considers that India has a constituency in the US with real influence and status. आधे के ज़्यादा जो कि woke हैं. The Indian community in the West is an invaluable asset in strengthening India's relationship with the world's only superpower, most of whom come up with the caste legislations, etc. Okay, conclusion. We are ending the paper, guys. Congratulations on listening to this whole thing. Let me just check how many people are online. Okay. Let's see some comments. What values America shares with Saudi? Yeah, shared values. Okay. Anti-fragile. Skin in the game এর পর তো fan হয়ে গেছিলাম. Yeah, exactly. Media में तो article ছিল না. Also strategic military bases. Yemen. Also B team. Yet the B team seems to be getting wary meeting with Assad. Okay. Nino is saying he's sometimes assessing things so accurately, but then 2 lines later he will say the most wild thing like he's bipolar or something. Yeah, bipolar bear. Okay, so in conclusion, India is a major power with confidence in itself and its future. It is expected to surpass Japan as the world's third largest economy before the end of this decade. हाँ, जापान का इकोनॉमी कैसे गड्ढे में गया, इसीलिए मैं कह रहा हूँ कि उतना उछलो मत कि हमारा आज 5th लार्जेस्ट जीडीपी है, 8% ग्रोथ रेट है, वो हमेशा नहीं रहेगा. जापान का भी लोगों ने सोचा था कि जापान तो हो जाएगा कुछ बहुत जल्दी. नहीं होता है. रशिया नहीं हुआ. आज भी रशिया का जीडीपी हमसे कम है. इंडिया इज असर्टिवली सारे के सारे किसान नेताओं को हाउस अरेस्ट में रखो, कोई टॉर्चर वर्चर मत करो, कॉन्सेंट्रेशन कैंप नहीं, सब किसान नेताओं को हाउस अरेस्ट में रखो, एसी घर में रखो, गाना वाना पॉर्न वॉर्न जो देखना है देखने दो, और तब 10 साल में देखो हमारा फार्मर्स का क्या हो जाता है. दैट विल बी आवर बिगेस्ट कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटर टू आवर जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेट. इट इज एक्सपेक्टेड टू सरपास जापान एज द वर्ल्ड्स थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बिफोर द एंड ऑफ दिस डेकेड. Pretty much. India is assertively expressing its position on various issues on the international stage. Its opinions are valued and sought after. It is a voice for the global south and its issues. Yeah, true. Major global objectives such as climate change mitigation cannot be achieved without India's leadership. True. India has responded by taking the lead in forming organizations such as the International Solar Alliance. Yeah, true. But what does that have to be doing with the rest of the paper? The positive and balancing role that India can play is widely recognized around the world. India is today sought as an economic and security partner by the US, Europe, Russia, Japan, Australia, among others. India is central to the Indo-Pacific strategy or calculations of major countries that have an interest in the region. अच्छा, footnote पढ़ लेते हैं. International Solar Alliance क्या है? For those of you who don't know, it was conceived as a joint effort by India and France to mobilize efforts against climate change through deployments of solar energy solutions. It was conceptualized on the sidelines of the 21st Conference of Parties, COP21, to the United Nations Framework Convention, UNFCCC, held in Paris 2015. NATO wants to have closer engagement with India. As a great power rivalry intensifying, the US wants to build alliances and partnerships and willing to listen to its partner suggestions and even live with differences as long as overall interests converge, while selling planes to Pakistan and sending Firad Hakim to as a Firad Hakim equivalent as ambassador. India is central to building resilient supply chains, with countries like the US proposing friend-shoring, while Europe considers its China plus one strategy. This puts India in a geopolitical sweet spot. As India's relative power continues to rise and that of the US and West relatively decline, it increases its options to negotiate favorable foreign policy outcomes. Okay, US का decline वो भी बहुत slow हो जाएगा. देखो वैसे भी $23 trillion growing at 3%, उसका decline कब आएगा वो हम तो नहीं रहेंगे जितने दिन में यूएसए का डिक्लाइन हम देखेंगे. डिक्लाइनिंग थोड़ा बहुत हम देखेंगे शायद, मगर इफ पीपल लाइक ट्रम्प, विवेक रामास्वामी, दे कम टू पावर रिपीटेडली, तब उसका डिक्लाइन भी नहीं होगा. तो स्टॉप डिपेंडिंग ऑन यूएसएस डिक्लाइन फॉर एनीथिंग इन योर लाइफ. This puts India in a geopolitical sweet spot. As India's relative power continues to rise and that of the US and the West relatively decline. Yeah, EU गया गड्ढे में, उसको कोई बचा नहीं पाएगा. But USA is a different matter. It increases its options to negotiate favorable foreign policy outcomes. हाँ, मगर अगर ट्रम्प और विवेक रामास्वामी प्रेसिडेंट बन गया तब नेगोशिएशन पावर उसके पास ही रहेगा. However, India still has a long way to go in terms of economic development, which is its primary goal and the driving force behind its foreign policy. India used its friendship with the Soviet Union to get investments in building steel factories, hydroelectric dams, cooperation in space and atomic energy, apart from defense technologies and cooperation. Today, India's partnership with the US is critical to achieving this. It may be critical, but of course, while ignoring all the defenses he said. As geopolitical factors favor India, there is a strategic opportunity. Some Indians are, is it critical really? हाँ, तो कोई ना कोई दोस्त तो चाहिए हमसे प्यार करने वाला. As geopolitical factors favor India, there is a strategic opportunity. Some Indians are influenced by emotions about the US and Russia rather than national interests. They argue India will lose strategic autonomy if it gets too close to the US. Strategic autonomy is a means of achieving development and security objectives. It is not something to flash, which becomes a millstone around the neck that hampers India's development and security goals. It also cannot be held hostage by sentiments from the past. Sentiments of the past का बात नहीं हो रहा है, पाकिस्तान को आज प्लेन बेच रहा है उसका बात हो रहा है. When such people discuss strategic autonomy, it is almost always in the context of relations with Russia, and Russia's strategic autonomy is arguably constrained when it comes to China. That is true. India's primary adversary against whom it is looking to secure itself. That is a good point made in this paper. Relations are a means of pursuing national interests. They are not the end in themselves. Yeah, true. In the wisdom of the time, India decided to go with the USSR in pursuit of its national interests. For those stuck in the past and influenced by nostalgia and emotions, post-Cold War relations with Russia became the end, not the means. True. Similarly, close relations with the US and the West at large are a means to pursue national interests rather than an end in themselves. India may well reassess the importance of its ties with the US if it does not serve it to its benefit. Okay, this is the fairest statement he has made in the entire paper. Basically, he's saying that okay, if your concerns are really, if they turn out to be right, then we don't have to have ties with USA. But he's just making the case that they are not that big of a concern, and we respectfully disagree. Fair enough. India's goal is to become a developed country with a capable military and a great power. It requires partners who are willing to assist in this endeavor. India's relations with the US are on an upward trajectory. However, there will inevitably be disagreements on some issues because India is a large and proud country that pursues its own interests. But both countries will likely address the divergences pragmatically. keeping their overall interests in mind. The US remains the world's premier power with global interests. When it intersects with India's interests, New Delhi will cooperate. Where they do not, India will take a position based on its national interests. Yeah, fair enough. The US is becoming accustomed to this, especially as its power is contested and stretched. True. If US does keep on being accustomed to this, fair enough. Those who oppose the US get carried away by what it does or does not do in other parts of the world and use it as an example or precedent to apply to India without taking into account the realities of India's growing power and the strength of its bilateral ties. Japan ka economy kisne dubaya? One cannot think and act like the India of the previous century, which was impoverished and lacking in capacity, but rather think like a $3.5 trillion and growing economy. India sits at the table as an equal. Equal nahi hai, Bibi. That is why we need to be careful. 23 or 3.5, kahan equal? Foreign policy must be driven by the cold pursuit of national interests, not emotion and ideology. Okay. That is the end of the paper. Nice. We read a 38-page paper in one sitting. Okay, let's check some comments again. Ei Brishti is incoming. Internet might die over here in Hyderabad. Acha. এমন ওয়ার্ডস ইউজ করে কনসিভ ডিপ্লয়েড এটসেট্রা অ্যাজ ইফ অরবিটে বাচ্চা পেপার ওপর তো করছে বাচ্চা নয় অন্য কিছু টিপটিপ বার্সা পানি লোল ওকে সো থ্যাঙ্কস আ লট গাইজ দিস ওয়াজ আ গ্রেট পেপার টু চেক আউট অ্যান্ড আইল সুন start a live stream discussing that woman's paper, discussing Arthashastra's relevance in today's geopolitics. That book has fascinating chapters as well. Let me just show you what are the chapters in that book, okay? Check this out. Ye dekho. You love the topics in the chapter. Okay. First chapter is Kautilya's Arthashastra, Central Paradigm and Grand Strategic Preferences. Second chapter is Nehruvian Foreign Policy, Realism and Idealism, 47 to 64. एकदम पार्ट में डिस्कस किया हुआ है इंडिया का फॉरेन पॉलिसी का हिस्ट्री. नेक्स्ट चैप्टर इज शास्त्री एंड इंदिरा, 64 to 84, Righteous Wars, Rajiv and Rao, 84 to 98, Modernization and Liberalization, Vajpayee and Singh, 98 to 2014, Alignment and Autonomy, Modi's Foreign Policy, Peace and Power, 2014 to 2019, and then Grand Strategic Preferences and India's Nuclear Doctrine. Okay, this is a very nice book that we are going to discuss in the live stream. And this is a woman who teaches this subject in the same institution where Yusuf is an adjunct scholar. So who knows what their motivations are. উত্তিষ্ট ভারত ইজ সিং দাদা বেদান্তিজম ওপর কোনোদিন স্ট্রিম করলে ভালো হয়. বেদান্তিজম সেকেন্ড লেকচার্স ফ্রম কলম্বো টু আলমোড়া. আচ্ছা, মানে অ্যাকচুয়ালি ওটার তাহলে রিয়াকশন ভিডিও টাইপের কিছু বানাতে হবে, কারণ আমি ওটার ব্যাপারে তো নিজে এখনও পড়ে উঠিনি. সো সাম টাইম সুন. ওকে দেন, থ্যাংকস আ লট ফর জয়নিং ইন দ্য লাইভ স্ট্রিম গাইজ. সি ইউ সুন. গুড নাইট.